Cheers, queers! What's on the big gay agenda today, Theora?
Today we are continuing our flag means death discussion, and today we'll focus on episode 203 because it's a lot.
A lot. Every
Lot.
episode is a lot at this point.
Yeah, but this one is a lot, and this was one of our fan favorites, so
Yes.
we gotta do it
And
justice.
I think it was all for one scene at the very end.
Yeah.
Alright, but before we get into the episode, we have some things to cover. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to our channel, give this video a like, and leave a comment below. We want to hear all your thoughts about this episode, the show, anything you really want to talk about. If you're listening to this podcast on audio platforms, please download the episode and leave a review. And if you're not able to leave a review on your platform, go to a podcast review website, review there. Somehow just review us. I give you some words to use in previous episodes if you want to add some weird... If you want to add the word kookaburra, that's my favorite one to have people add to an episode review. Anyway, join our Patreon if you want exclusive content, early access to our videos, and full reaction videos because we're not able to put them on YouTube. And you also get to tell us what you want to see, what you want to hear. What do you want? What is going through your head? If you want to just talk to us about all things queer media or queerness in general, or, how you doing in life, connect with us on our Discord channel because we love you.
We do.
And we want you with us. We want you to be part of our chaos crew, but that would be our Patreon. Join the Patreon. Anyway, you can also explore all of our merchandise on biggayenergypod.com. And lastly, but definitely not least, because this... you should all be doing this at this point. Follow us at Big Gay Energy Pod on all social media platforms. Just search us up. We're probably on it. I think that's it.
Yeah, everyone, thank you. And if you're specifically looking for our flag means death content, we have the full reaction video to this episode on the Patreon. So check that out. $5 a month. You can watch us. We can watch Zoey and Kaitlynn watching this episode for the very first time. That alone is worth $5. It's amazing.
And if there's a lot of interest, maybe we'll react to more.
Yes, you just let us know. But that aside, let's jump into episode 203, which is an amazing episode. So it opens with Zheng and her crew winning a raid against John Bartholomew, aka the Soul Reaper. First of all, I love how she's like, I'm not calling him that. What's his real name? And of course, it's something. They always have these generic white guy names for everybody, like John, Ned, Kevin.
100%, yeah.
Hey, at least Ned wasn't a white dude.
Yeah, but I just love the names, or these generic English names is what I mean. All right, so we got John. So Zhang corners him in his office because, he wants to see her face to face before he blows his brains out. And so she comes in. He doesn't know which one's the captain. And finally, she's like, yeah, it's me. And my favorite line from her is once that sets in that it's not Stede and it's not Olu, it's Zhang who just destroyed his ship. She's like, this must be very culturally hard for you. Before you blow your brains out, know that your last act will be surrendering to a woman.
But and then her little line delivery.
Her line delivery and her little sorry not sorry face. Where's her award for? Where's her award for Zhang?
I need her to be in everything. We need so much more from her. Yes. One day, men won't assume that the man in the room is the one who beat them and not the woman. That day is not today, 300 years later from when this is set, but one day.
Zhang just setting the foundation 300 years ago. We love her for that. Go Queen Zhang. The other thing I love from the scene is this is the first time we really get to see her negotiating. And because all we know up till now about her is that she conquered China, is a pirate queen, but how did she get there? Because she seems very different captain-wise, captain style-wise from Blackbeard, kind of a little bit of Stede in there, but how did she do it? And the reason she's so successful is she's a master negotiator. So instead of strong-arming John or into doing what she wants, she has a conversation with him in which she reminds him very tactfully who the actual enemy is, which is the imperialists, not other pirates. So she said the line of like, I didn't get into this business, like pirating, to fight other pirates. I'm here to like raid the monarchies. And then he's like, yeah. So we aren't enemies. She's like, exactly. They're the enemy. She's like, what if we like we're partners and work together against the actual enemy? Like she redirects his focus away from her onto like, yeah, who's the bigger threat here? It's like the navies that are trying to put us out of business, aka like eliminate piracy, right? So the way she's successful is she forms healthy alliances in which both parties have a vested interest in mutual success. And like when I'm reading, and like that's brilliant, and obviously like that's how you become like a big leader of a giant fleet, obviously. But the other thing I love about this is like Zhang kind of reminds me of like what Stede could have been like down the road if he was willing to be a little bit more ruthless. But yeah, like he has that same kind of like, let me hear you out, and like he's a little bit more of a people pleaser than she is, but like they kind of have that similar like tact of like, what do you want and how do I exploit that, kind of thing.
There really are a lot of similarities between the two of them, Stede and Zheng. I mean, I feel like they both start calmly, whereas Ed would go and just like start slashing everything with all his knives, and then think later. But Zheng knows that there, like you said, that there is a time where she will need to use the Force. Sorry.
I wouldn't be surprised if she was a Jedi. Let's be real.
Now this episode has to come out on May 4th.
Oh my god, yes. I'll see what I can do.
There's no way. But yeah, the Stede hasn't gotten there yet. He would also, Zheng is more smart. She has more stuff. I mean, Stede has knowledge, but Zheng was like, I need to learn everything if I'm going to take over the world, and even more so because I'm a woman.
Yeah, and like Stede is educated. Obviously, he's from like the aristocratic class, so like he's the only one of his crew who knows what China is, and he can read. Like he's literate, things like that. But Zhang is worldly. Like Zhang has like street smarts in addition to being highly educated, whereas Stede has been isolated in his little like aristocrat bubble, and like so that's why he's such a disaster when he gets out and he's breaking all these pirate rules he doesn't know anything about. Like Zhang is a much more like, let me observe, figure out the situation, and then like that's why I think she's a mastermind in a lot of ways, because she's very smart. There you go, Kaitlynn. She's super smart, and she's strategic, and she plays the long game. She's like, yeah, I could kill this captain right here and now and like win the raid, but she's like, I'm looking to build my fleet. I'm looking 10 moves ahead, not just like dealing with, John Bartholomew right now. I'm looking to like take over the world, basically. So like she's very brilliant. And she has this conversation with Stede where Stede was like, oh, I love the way you like negotiated that. And like, I'm always pro talk it through. If we just talk, we can solve everything. And she's like, yeah, but like, this is like a join me or die situation. Like if he wasn't willing to like join my alliance, then I have to kill him because now he's a threat to me. And that's when Stede was like, oh, I don't even know if I can do that. Because she said, quote, I didn't conquer China by letting people go on about their feelings. She's like, at some point, she's like, if the negotiating doesn't work, I have to eliminate this threat. So like, and that lies the key difference between Zhang and Stede at this point in time.
And that even comes like apparent when like, in like a later episode when like she reunites with Olu and she's like talking to him and she's like, yeah, fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, I have to kill you. And he's like,
right.
I don't think that's how
exactly.
He's like, well, that's how I was taught.
Yeah, and look, she's still alive and has this giant fleet of pirates. So like it's working for her.
I love the writing in the show because every time you have a quote in here from the show, I can hear it. And they're like between the actors' line deliveries and the writing itself, because it's really hard if the writing's not good to have good delivery. So both of them together is just what makes this show amazing, in my opinion.
I totally agree with that. Speaking of Olu, so when they were first going towards Bartholomew's cabin, and she's like, "Who is this? What are we doing?" Zheng and Olu, they do some flirting, and it's real cute. Zheng catching them feelings, and have I mentioned how much I love them? Because I love them so much.
They're so fucking cute.
They're so cute.
It's hard. Theora and I talked about. Well, Theora told me that she tried to minimize how much she's going to say I love Zheng in this episode, but it's really
no, in
hard
general.
because,
it's impossible.
Yeah, in general,
I love her so much.
And like I think,
but
the appeal of Zheng is the sheer point of like she's different than like any other pirate that we've seen in this, and that's the point of her character. Because like even like historically speaking, like there is no other pirate that was also female who conquered a whole fucking place just by herself. Like that's unheard of, at least in like that time period at that point in time. So like the fact that she's just this badass like pirate queen who conquered China single-handedly, and then is out here like with a silver tongue, like that's such a badass combo. Like she's anything but a forgettable character.
I totally agree, and that's why I love the contrast with her schoolgirl crush on Olu, because it just like it's adorable. Like it just makes her three-dimensional in a beautiful way versus like just being strictly ruthless.
I mean, to be fair though, like assuming that, because I can't remember if Zhang Sao actually grew up in China or not, or if that was just like fuck it, I have a thing against China. But like say that she is canonically like from China and everything. In Asian countries, it's very much so like a thing to just kind of shut off your emotions, focus on school, stuff like that. So this is her like kind of rekindling like her childlike sense when it comes to like, as you said, her schoolgirl crush on Olu, because like she most likely has never felt that way before, or at least had like a chance to like experiment with those types of feelings, because it's always been like, oh well, I have to be this badass bitch, because if I'm not, then nobody's gonna take me seriously. I have to make sure that my knowledge is on point, because I can't let any room for error or have like a male nonetheless question my like authority and my mentality. So like Olu, like he's doing the same thing that he did with Jim, in a sense of bringing out the best and giving like a security blanket and being like, you can be yourself around me, it is fine.
That is a really good point. And historically though, with Zhang, she basically the reason she got into pirating is her husband was a pirate, and then like when he died, she took over and like quadrupled the fleet and became way more successful than he ever was. So yeah, there was probably that element of like, they have to see me as the captain now when they saw him as the captain. So yeah, to your point, that probably makes a lot of sense. And yeah, Olu he's just a cute little safe space for lots of people. Bear. He's a teddy bear. I love him. Okay.
Olu and Jim as okay, we'll get into like the whole friend group later. It's just so much. Damn it.
Bye, Kaitlynn. Kaitlynn can't handle it. All right, so Zhang. All right, so let's move on a little bit. So Zhang then everyone's in. They go back to the red flag, and then they stumble upon the Revenge, which has seen better days. She looking ragged. She's seen some stuff that Storm thrashed her about. So Stede, hearing that it's the Revenge, like literally launches himself overboard into the water swims over to go find Ed. And on the Revenge, he finds a fucked up ship and a traumatized crew chowing down on a seagull like starving animals, and they gone feral.
I do love how Stede commits to throwing himself overboard. No other thoughts. Go to Ed.
Yeah.
That's it.
He's like, I could die in this water, maybe. Who knows what's in there? No, let's just go.
Yep, and go he did. So basically, he finds the crew, doesn't find Ed, and the crew gets like taken back on board to the red flag. And Auntie's like, Zhang, we gotta kill these motherfuckers. I smell mutiny, because where the fuck is their captain? Like, this is danger zone. And Zhang's like, all I smell is leather and BO. I don't know what you're talking about. You're blowing this out of proportion, Auntie. And Auntie's like, girl, you compromise. She's like, you just want to keep the soft one, meaning Olu, happy. And so, like, I like that Auntie calls Zhang out on her bullshit immediately. She's like, girl, no, you're going to get us all killed. Which, she 100% is compromised, but it's also cute.
Just let her love.
I know, and it's also sad. because like you brought up a lot of these points earlier, Zoey, but I think the broader stroke here with putting Zheng specifically into this show is I think she's really supposed to be a foil to Blackbeard in a lot of ways, because like think about like in a contrast, like complete direct contrast way, because like think about like gender is obviously the big one. Like they're both successful pirates with strong crews, but gender is the thing that separates them. Their leadership style is definitely different, which we talked about. They're both successful, but her level, their marker for success is different. Like Blackbeard has the most consecutive raids at this point, but like she conquered a country, a nation, has a fleet, like basically has a navy at this point. So like the success level is different. The last point where their foils is love and happiness, and this one I think is really interesting. And so to bring it back to the scene with Auntie and Zheng, I think the scene is showing more so the reality of a captain specifically seeking happiness with a non-leader crew member. So not like her first mate, like Olu's just like she bought him basically to serve on the ship. Like she bought him from Spanish Jackie. Like so like he's not in a leadership rank at all. He's like bottom of the barrel on this ship. And so like from Auntie's perspective, she's like, this is dangerous what you're doing, because like it's like man for hire situation. Like his loyalty to Zheng is like not organic the way Auntie's is. It's more so like you bought me and you forced me to be here kind of thing. So like Auntie's like, I don't really trust him, because where does his loyalty really lie at the end of the day? Probably with the crew he's been with for years or whatever. And I think what this scene is really trying to show is how that kind of choice to like choose that kind of romance is dangerous for Zheng and also her crew that has been loyal to her like organically in a way. So like it's a shitty position for her to be in, to be like trying to find love when it's like no, the person she's trying to love is like not at her level, which is what, if you contrast that with Stede and Blackbeard, it's a little bit different because they're both leaders. So like it's the loyalty thing kind of like isn't really a part of that. It's a little bit different. But for Zheng, there's like this element of like danger if things go wrong, which is what ends up unfortunately playing out in this episode. So
yeah, and that's like the thing I wanted to add on was I find it very interesting because there's power imbalances rather between Olu and Zheng, because again, she bought him, unfortunately, which is wild in of itself.
yes.
But like it's just the fact of the matter that it's like, okay, well, if I don't play into it, if I like, because like, and like Olu was very much so like into her, but like say like he wasn't, and like his heart was still for Jim, he's kind of put in the position of, okay, well, I have to, because if I don't, I will die. And thankfully that's not the case in this situation, but that is most definitely the case for like other crews. Like there has to be like at least like some instances of that happening in pirating history. Like you can't tell me otherwise, since that's a very big like part of corporate America as well as like other corporations.
Yep.
So it's like that's the only like leg up that Stede and Ed have on Zhang, is the fact that like they don't have a power imbalance. They're free to do whatever they want. Like, yeah, it's gonna offend each other, but like at the end of the day, they're on the same like playing field. Whereas Olu and Zhang, she's up here and Olu's down here as a crewmate. Like, and like and like I would probably go as far to say like he's below Zhang's crew, just for the sheer fact of like they've been around, like you said, they organically are loyal to her. So him, along with everybody else that's a part of her crew, the crew of the Revenge, is like, here's Zhang, here's her crew, here's the Revenge.
Yeah, and like let's be real, the only reason the crew of like Stede's crew is even on that ship is because Zhang wanted Olu. Like that's the only reason they're there. Like otherwise, like she wouldn't have like made their freedom, and by freedom I mean transfer to her employer ship, part of the deal with Jackie. It's because she wants Olu, basically. So if that wasn't the case, like they wouldn't even be in this position. But I totally agree with you. Like, and from Auntie's, but Auntie's the only one who can see it. She's like, Zhang, like, if this goes south, like we're gonna have a second mutiny because like he's loyal, his captain is on this ship with us. Like this is even more dangerous than just picking up like another crewmate kind of situation, adopting a new crewmate basically. Okay. All right, so let's moving on. So the whole time Stede is trying to figure out what happened to Ed to no avail. He's trying to figure out what happened to Ed because like he's on the Revenge. He's like, where the hell's Ed? And like the crew is not being forthcoming. So we don't really know until we cut to a scene where Ed is like passed out on the shore, almost like he washed up there. And then this mystery human collects him and like takes him away. And we come to learn throughout the course of the episode that basically like this island is Ed's purgatory. And so we don't find that till like halfway through the episode, basically. But like even just in this shot of just Ed being washed up on shore, like the island has this weird feel to it. It's like shrouded in mist most of the time, which gives it this like otherworld feel. And the colors the entire time are very dull, like it's like a very monotoned blue. And we see like instances besides like the guy that picks him up, who we learn later who he is. There's like some animals, like some seagulls, there's a pig, but like there's not a lot of life. So like the island feels very desolate despite living things being there. So I just wanted to comment all that to say like I really appreciate how the creators made the place feel like it was in limbo because like there's some life but not really, and then the island still feels like dead even though there's life. Like I like the way they kind of like depicted the island to give you that feel of purgatory. I thought that was really well done.
I like the pig.
I think it was Rosie is the name of the pig.
It's beautiful.
I also think it's hilarious because like it gives like at least like the way that I interpret it with like the animals being there is like the conflict of like most religions being like, oh, animals don't go to heaven and like animals are in purgatory.
That's a really good point. I love that.
So I think that I thought it was such like a nice little choice because like that could very well not be what like the directors were trying to convey, but like it would make sense for Ed's character for him to be like, well, it'd be nice if animals go to heaven, but like I think they go to like a different place and it just is purgatory and that's why the animals are there.
But if they're in purgatory, it means they're like in between quote like heaven and hell. What did the pig do to get into purgatory?
Ate bacon
in the past life.
So Ed gets dragged off, and then when he comes to, he still doesn't know who the dude is that rescued him. And I love when he asks, because he doesn't know what's going on, and the guy's like fiddling in a corner. And I love he asks, "What did you do to me when I was out? Anything weird?" I love that that's his first line. But it turns out the man is someone from Ed's past. It's Captain Ben Hornigold. And so poor Ed lets that sink in, and then we cut back to the Revenge. So
I did have a little add-on for that. I do think it's an interesting choice that Ed's old captain is his guide through purgatory because that kind of makes me believe that like while like he does have his like problems and everything with Ben, and like the way that he was treated, it does beg the question of how much did he value Ben's opinion? Was this his first captain? Like, what's the story behind that? Because obviously he holds like a significant he holds like a significance for Ed's like character backstory and everything. So he's there for a reason. So that makes me believe that either like the more reasonable option where it's like, okay, well, Ed just looked up to him a lot and he somehow found comfort in the way that Ben treated him because in a sense he may have been like his like secondary dad because we all know that his like initial dad was not the best. Or you could take the Bizarro route and just say that he was so like enamored with Ben that he kind of viewed him as like a godlike person, and that's why Ben is his guide in purgatory because like in most like scenarios there's like a godlike like humanoid creature or whatever or like whatever you want to call it in purgatory to be the guide. So like there's like two different sides to the coin of how you can interpret it. Like I said, the second one is definitely like the Bizarro one, but it's not too hard to like believe that like the first option with like him seeing him as like a father figure or just him having significance in general is the reason why Ben is his guide. And I also like how they chose a character that we haven't met yet rather than doing one that we have already met because my heart would break if it was fucking Calico Jack.
yes.
I would feel so weird if it was Stede. Like it was such a nice choice that they chose like his old captain out of like all the people that they could have chose.
I agree. Or like his actual father, that would have been fucked. But I agree with everything you're saying, and I think to your point, it could potentially like if you're going into religion as like, and they keep it very generic, which I love.
Yeah.
They don't like a default to Christianity or anything. They're just like, a lot of religions have this.
Yeah, even though that was very much so the predominant religion, I'm glad that you did not. They just made it like, okay, well, let's make sure as much people as possible can relate to this.
Yeah, I appreciate that choice and the choice of phrasing when they did that. To your point, though, between the two options of why the captain, like father versus like religious idol figure of some, like mystical guide of some point, it could be a combination of both. Because in some religions, like, you know, God is referred to as a father figure, like a paternal figure. So like maybe it's a combo of those two things, and that's how we get the manifestation of Ben, which is interesting. That's a really good point.
Cough, cough. Explain it in season 3. Cough, cough.
Yes, please do. Please do. Oh my god, could you imagine if we got an episode of, because Buttons mentions that he knows things about the gravy basket, and we got like a Buttons episode. I'm sure his gravy basket is wild. Whatever he's manifesting, I would love to know what that looked like.
Lots of birds.
Yeah, lots of seagulls.
I don't know. I feel like he's got like all kinds of sea mystical creatures showing up for him. Anyway, so we cut back to, after this, we cut back to the revenge. And Auntie's now, because like Auntie's like, I smell mutiny, I'm going to investigate. So she gets on the revenge with Frenchie and Fang and is trying to figure out what happened. And I'm pretty sure she's harnessing the power of the sea witch to figure out what happened to Ed. And it like, she just like walks on board and is like, a man was murdered here. Just like step by step. She's like, he was 6 foot tall, like has tattoos. And they're like, what the fuck? How is she doing this? And truly, Auntie, like, you should really gamble more if you haven't, because like you would clean house with like your clairvoyancy.
Yeah, 100%.
Feel like people would think that she was doing something behind the scenes though to keep winning.
I mean, she's harnessing the sea witch. She is doing something.
I mean, not to mention, even if she was like cheating or something, nobody's gonna fucking step up to Auntie.
Right.
They're not gonna question that.
What are they gonna do? She's like, my boss is Zheng. What are you gonna do? Also, I'm Auntie.
I think Archie needs to bring Auntie to Deadlock, because they could really use a detective like her in that show.
I would love that so much. Just throwing that out there, everyone.
Deadlock season 2. Woo!
Woo! Okay. So while Auntie is like exposing what happened on the revenge, Jim and Olu are on the red sail, and they have a heart-to-heart finally, because they haven't really talked since like all the shit went down between the two of them. So Jim comes clean about dating Archie, which is really cute, because like Olu's like Jim's best friend and is like, listen, I know we had a thing, but you're the person I want to tell stuff to. And I thought that was very sweet.
It was the way they had the conversation too. I first of all, this is one of my favorite conversations. So at this point, they both have someone that they're liking and into. So they've accepted that they're not going to be together. They just haven't had this conversation yet. And I think both of them having other people helps. But after talking, they know that they'll always be there for each other. They're best friends. Like, they have a bond that you can't break. And I just love how comfortable they are with each other, and how Jim at the end was like, I saw her boobs. And I think Olu goes, oh, wow. And then they go, both of them. And he's like, all right, that's enough, and walks away. And then Jim's little smile is adorable.
I will say though, I could definitely see Archie, Jim, and Olu being in a poly relationship if Zheng wasn't in the picture.
Right. I think that, so a lot of people are like the polycule. I'm like, I see that, but I don't see Zheng sharing is the thing.
No.
That's why I even emphasize with her not in the picture.
The thing is, I'm wondering if maybe Zheng works with Spanish Jackie to like figure out how to have multiple people in a relationship. I don't know what Spanish Jackie's full arrangement is with the husbands, because, you know, they have to be like in relationships as well. You never know.
I mean, it honestly could just be like a harem style thing where it's just all the men catering to the woman.
That's what I think it is. It's more like, because when the Swede's talking about it, he's like, it's my day to do the husband do. Like, they have a schedule of like who's the husband, like husband number one that day. So yeah, I think it's more of a harem than like a polycule situation where there's like romance amongst the men. But like, who knows?
You never
Season
know.
3, please. Explain the harem.
What's the likelihood of like the 20 husbands all being able to find women that would approve of them being in a relationship with like 21 plus people? And the fact that like Jackie, she's definitely not the type to share. That's why she has 20 husbands, so she can eat her cake, have her cake and eat it too. But like I know for a fact that if like one of them went to go cheat on her with like another person and she found out, 100% she'd be down to 19 husbands.
Yep. She'd have more than just fodder for the nose jar.
Yeah.
And like with Zheng, the other reason why I think it's unlikely that that's what's happening with Zheng in the picture is because of the way Zheng is clearly jealous of Jim. Like, I don't think that's gonna work out with Zheng.
Yeah, her vibe around Jim is just like,
stay away.
She's just like, I why are you here? What is the point of you being here? Like, you
Right.
know damn well she had like great, like she had a bunch of like hype about throwing Jim into like the cell.
Yes. No, exactly.
But I think they could, maybe if they worked on their relationship, like we could see more bonding in season 3.
I mean, it would
for
be
sure.
wonderful for Zhang and Jim to be friends, and that would definitely like cause like Olu would definitely have like some comfort in that because he's like, oh, sick, my girlfriend and my best friend are friends. Hell yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's where it's headed. Like, we'll get to the scenes later with Zhang and Jim where they kind of like make up in a way, or like move on from like the initial jealousy. But yeah, I think that's where that was really headed. But
it's a polycule of friendship where like there'll be two separate couples, but they'll always be together.
Yeah, I can see that. There's some platonic stuff happening.
And Jay's like, we're hanging out with them again. Come on now.
But okay, other thing I just want to say about the scene with Jim and Olu is that I love the evolution of their relationship throughout the show. Like how it's both romantic and aromantic at the same time. Like it's just refreshing to see like this complex relationship on screen. And I honestly love all of the phases of their relationship like feel organic and like not forced. Cause like in the beginning there's a romantic attraction, a sexual attraction between the two of them, but then also like there's just like that best friend element, all of it feels right for these two characters, and that's so refreshing to see in a TV show, truly.
And not to bring up the Vico interview again, but if you want to see Vico's response when we asked if they prefer Olu and Jim or Jim and Archie, that is a question we did ask, and you can go watch it.
Yeah, check that out from the actor themselves.
Yeah, go watch the whole thing.
Yeah, watch the whole thing. The Vicos of love. Okay, so moving on. Another scene that I really love in this episode is some other people who really need to clear the air, which is Stede and Izzy. This is long overdue. So Stede at this point is wandering around the Revenge, cleaning up the knives that are everywhere.
An abundance of knives.
So many knives. When he runs into Izzy. Izzy is guilty and angry over everything that went down with Ed. And I think blames a lot of what happened on Stede, but also like on himself. Because he admits in this conversation, he's like, we both did this. Like, we're the reason Ed went crazy, basically. And just like became a madman, hell-bent on burning the world down with him. So in the beginning of the conversation, Izzy is boasting that he knows Ed best. But then Stede proves him wrong. Because in his head, Izzy, I think, is still grappling with the fact that, like, he's like, I knew Blackbeard. I was his confidant. But, like, Stede really, like, under the radar of Izzy, like, actually became the one that knew Ed the best. And Stede cuts him off, and he's like, listen, he was either going to let the world burn or die trying. So which was it? Like, not romanticizing the fact that, like, Ed was trying to find him or win him back or, like, be a good person. He's like, I know Ed. I know he's going to just, like, spiral into oblivion and, like, kill himself or kill everybody. Like, which one was it, Izzy? And so I think in this way, Izzy comes to terms with the fact that Ed and Stede had a real relationship. I think this is an epiphany he's having in this moment. Because so far he's been brushing off their connection as trivial. But here is Stede proving that he knows Ed because Ed lets Stede in and lets Stede actually know who Ed is beneath the Blackbeard persona, which is, I don't think, something Izzy had the privilege of really knowing, because Izzy was much more in awe of and loyal to the Blackbeard persona, not Ed, the man beneath, you know?
I will say, and I keep forgetting to mention this, but Ed and Stede's relationship, it purely reminds me of the song Let the World Burn by Chris Gray, because like it literally says, I let the world burn, let the world burn for you. This is how it always had to end. If I can't have you, then no one can. And like it's like a very like obsessive song and everything. And like it's like the singer, he's like coming to terms with like, I shouldn't have ever fallen in love, but then I found you and I regret it, but at the same time I don't. But if anybody like hurts you or fucks with you, or if I lose you, that's it. Lights out. The world's fucking burning. I don't care who goes down with it. If I can't have you, no one else gets the pleasure of knowing you or being with you. And like that's definitely the energy that Ed has most of the time. Like it's so wild. And like if y'all haven't heard that song, definitely listen to it. It's a really good fucking song.
That all 100% tracks for Ed, like up till this point in the show. Absolutely. I feel like that's his theme song so far.
It's his theme song.
The other element to this conversation is I think there's some jealousy that on Izzy's part that kind of goes along with coming to terms with that realization that like Stede and Ed like really knew each other on a level that Izzy was never privileged to know. But Izzy in the scene doesn't fight it because he's been fighting that realization for a really long time. Here he just seems really tired and just like resigned to the truth. Like he survived the wrath of Blackbeard in the wake of Stede abandoning him, and I think he's kind of like, you win, Stede, a little bit in this moment, which is, that's character growth for Izzy. Izzy goes on quite a journey,
especially in season 2.
Yes, especially here. And that's like
run.
Yeah, and it's just like you see it episode by episode, just like the arc of Izzy is really fantastic. Okay, so Stede in this conversation learns that Ed went mad and the crew sent him to doggy heaven, which is the evidence of the mutiny. Just kidding. Izzy says they left him on a deserted beach. So there's no mutiny. There's no mutiny, Stede. Don't say that word.
Nothing happened.
Huh?
Nothing happened.
Nothing happened. And
there's
obviously
no war and Bossing say.
And so obviously Izzy isn't telling the truth because of the pirate code, which again, Stede still hasn't read the handbook of how to be a pirate. Because Izzy's like, listen, if you even say that M word and Zheng found out, she's going to kill all of us, because why on earth would a captain adopt a crew that just turned on their captain? That's insane. Nobody would do that.
Which is ironic because that's essentially what Blackbeard did.
Yes.
Because they were like on the brink and then Blackbeard just shows up.
That's true. But like Blackbeard was losing his marbles that time too. The other thing though, I love this explanation that like we just, we deserted him on a beach. We didn't kill him. To me, the explanation is he telling it to Stede? It very much reads to me like an explanation you'd tell a child. You're like, your pet went to live on a farm. It's kind of like the energy from that conversation. Because Stede is like a child.
But I mean, Stede is a child, basically. He's a pirate child. Because he has still pure views of the pirating world. Maybe not so much anymore because he's seen some shit, but just not as much as Ed and everyone else has.
Yeah.
And he has experienced his first actual love. So he's going through like all these milestones for childhood, basically, all at once right now. And telling him that they killed Blackbeard, or almost did, it would have killed him, and we see it later how much he's upset about it. So just that the crew is capable of doing this to someone that he loved, because he wants everyone to be happy and love each other. I don't know how you handle that with when you're like literally going on other ships and stealing shit from them and whatever. But
I will say though, kind of like circling back to like the whole child thing, I think it's like very wonderful how like pretty much everybody in the show gets like a chance to like embrace their inner child at one point or another. And like
Yes.
I think that's so wonderful because like a lot of people underestimate how like healing and nice it is to like rekindle that relationship with your child self. Like it's so healing. Like I love doing like adult coloring books because the ones that are made for kids are too convoluted and it stresses me out. I love building Legos. I love
I
like
like the Legos.
like there's so many things and like it's so healing. Like it's so nice to just like have wizard time and build a Lego set. Like it's so nice.
That is why my mom's a nanny, so I get to do all of these. I get so distracted by their toys in general, though. There's some really entertaining toddler toys.
100%. There's now like a gaming chair for children. It's an interactive one. And like it's so wild. I'm like, I wish I had that as a kid.
The technology is insane.
Right. An easy bake oven that won't kill you.
Who would have thought? Where's the fun in that? All right.
Burning means that they learn.
Back on the deserted beach.
Burns. Sorry.
Yes, the good old scars of childhood, chemical burns.
Back on the beach.
Back on the deserted beach, Ed is dealing with Ben and the exile life. And they have this chat about their respective crews mutinying against them. And Ben tells the story of Felix, who was, quote, a really nice guy, according to Ed, who was forced to eat a live crab as punishment for stealing extra rations, which obviously killed him. So Ed marvels that Ben doesn't seem to feel bad about this at all. And Ben says, feeling bad about it isn't going to rebuild an abdominal wall, is it? You got to move on, man, or you blow your brains out. Since we know that since we know that Ben is basically a manifestation of Ed's subconsciousness this entire time, this story is really interesting that he's bringing this up now in Purgatory. Because I think that in Ed's brain, he thinks post Stede, he only has two options, and he doesn't know how to cope with either option. Because everything with Stede feels final to him. To Ed, there's no third option where like Stede wants him back or like he can be happy in another way. Like not anymore. Like it's like he's been crushed and that's it. And I think that Ed thinks he's at the point where like moving on feels really impossible because he's like the wound is still so fresh, and therefore like ending it to end his own suffering feels like his only option, but he's like very torn between those two things. So hence like why he was he pushed his own crew to the point where they would mutiny and do the dirty work for him, which is unlike Ben. Like Ben was just being a dick of a captain and the crew got fed up and like mutinied, whereas like Ed was like doing it on purpose so that they would like enact option number 2, basically.
And the only one who caught on was Izzy, with him being like, I'm not gonna I'm done cleaning up your messes. If you want to kill yourself, you can do it yourself.
Exactly.
Like, he's the only one that catches on. So it's very interesting how like Izzy just let the whole mutiny run its course. Like that just kind of like signified to me that like this might have been like Izzy's breaking point, and he was like, fuck it, if they want to kill him, let him kill him. Again, I'm tired of cleaning up his messes, and if I'm not going to stop him, I'm not going to stop them for giving him his consequences, because he needs to learn somehow or another.
And truly good for Izzy, because Izzy has been on the road of like finding his own self-worth and gaining his own autonomy versus just being Blackbeard's, quote, just Blackbeard's right-hand man, and then part of that is just being his puppet, you know? And we saw Izzy like very much struggle with that when Ed would give him orders and he's like, he would have to defend it to the crew, and the crew's like, why are we doing this? And he's like, it's not your place to question me, just fucking do it. And like Izzy was clearly conflicted with what was going on. Yeah, so I do love that, like, you know, Izzy being like, enough with the toxicity, like do your own, just do what you're gonna do, I can't stop you, kind of thing. Okay, and so another part of the Ben manifestation is the inn stuff. So we transition into Fantasyland, aka Ed's dream of domesticity. So he makes it very clear throughout this whole season that he has had a dream of running an inn, as all queers do, apparently, for quite some time. And the thing that Ed likes about it is it's a simple life. He says something like, he's like, I will get a set of keys. I get to carry keys around like a jailer, but like the people like me and they can leave whenever they want. Like, so to Ed, like, he's like, that's the epitome of like living, right? I get to have keys, responsibility, and like things like that. Things that he doesn't have as a pirate. A pirate, you're just like surviving day to day and like pillaging to buy food and stuff. And he's like, I get real responsibility where people like me is the key. And so I love that they do this role play where Ben acts as like somebody who's coming to visit the inn, and like Ed gets to be his persona of Jeff. And he's running Jeff's Inn by the Sea. I love that's his persona.
I also love. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I also love how like throughout this, Ben's just being an absolute dick. And Ed's like, come on, man, why are you being a dick? And he's like, what? You're going to have customers like this. You got to be prepared.
Oh That's also how it is when you're a child, too. You're like, you're not playing right.
Yeah, 100%. Like, that is 100% Ed right there. He's like, no, you gotta be nice. I'm the innkeeper, damn it.
This scene is brilliant in so many ways. Because remember that, like, Ben being a dick and not, quote, playing the right way, it's Ed's brain conjuring this. So it's like Ed's fear of failing and not being able to attain this life that he wants is manifesting right now through Ben. And there's a lot of things I like about this scene. So first of all, Ed makes the little fern boutonniere to make himself look fancy, which is just such an Ed move, and it's so cute, and I love it. So he gets all dressed up.
This outfit, though. For some reason, I'm like, he looks good in this. It's so simple, but
he's got his hair back.
Yeah, he's the whole package, man.
To be honest, though, while it is an Ed-coded thing, it's definitely an Ed-coded thing that he learned from Stede.
Yeah, he's wearing his fine fern well. So the conversation between the two of them quickly goes south because, again, Ed's biggest insecurity is his fear that people, Steve, can't love him. So, of course, imaginary Ben quickly points out that Ed was, so that's why he's being a dick. And he's like, you're supposed to be a people person. How could you run an inn if you're not a people person? People have to like you for you to be successful. So that's just a manifestation of Ed's fear. So, of course, Ben is very quick to point out that Ed was vulnerable with Stede, told him about the Kraken. He brings that up. And Stede left him, showing that, like, hey, when people really get to know you, they can't love you. They're going to run away. Like, nobody loves who you really are, Ed. And here's Ed hiding behind Jeff, right? So he's still not being authentic in the scene, really. So naturally, this sends Ed on a murderous rampage, which is futile because Ben is a figment of his imagination, she comes to find out.
Yeah, so first of all, really cute scene because it is just like he wants to live out his fantasy. And I think back to him being upset that he wasn't being a good guest. It's just like not even in a fantasy can he have this ideal domestic life. But since this whole thing, spoiler, ends with him deciding if he is going to live or die, I am wondering if the whole scene was supposed to be him trying to have his ideal domestic life. I mean, ideally it would have Stede in it, but, it's a good thing he's not there, and run an inn. But deep down, he knows that his past is always going to be haunting him. And we see it later when he tries to kill... is his name Ben, you said?
Ben.
Yeah, Ben. So he keeps trying to kill him, and then he's just like a zombie and keeps coming back to life. So I feel like that guy represents everything that Ed's ever done, all the kills that he's had a hand in. And it's kind of like he is trying to figure out if he even deserves to live, especially with his actions right before coming to purgatory.
And that's also like a very like common trauma response for people to have, wanting to like kill their past instead of being like, and like other people being like, my past doesn't define me. Like it's two sides of a coin, because Stede, he's come to terms with my past doesn't define me. I fucking love you, Ed. When Ed is on the other side of the spectrum and he's like, but I am my past. I want to kill my past, but there's not a way. I don't want to retire because if I retire, I'm nothing, but I really want this in. But if I get this in, it's too like end all be all. I'm no longer a pirate. I'm with Stede forever. I love Stede, but I've never had something like this before. It's fucking horrifying. So like I really like how they did that whole thing, especially with like the means of purgatory, and like as Kaitlynn said, like he gets to choose whether he wants to live or die. Um and like it's so interesting how they chose that aspect because of like the whole don't go into the light thing. And this is him trying to like battle that out with, okay, well, if I do live, there's potential I can see Stede, but if I do live, there's a potential I could see Stede and I have to like actually talk out my feelings because he's going to force me to talk out my feelings whether I like it or not. So it's very very interesting aspect, and I'm really glad that you decided to bring that up, Kaitlynn.
Yeah, it's like Ed is his own worst enemy, basically, and he's very driven by fear, whether he wants to admit it or not. And so I like that it comes out in his subconscious in all these layered ways, like you were both saying. So while Ed is in purgatory figuring his shit out, Auntie shows Zhang and Stede the crew has been hiding evidence of mutiny by keeping Ed's body hidden. Because of course Auntie found the body because she should be a detective, like Kaitlynn said. And the look of satisfaction on her face, she's like, I knew it. It's just everything. Okay.
She knows all.
She knows all. And as predicted, Zhang imprisons Ed's crew and plans to execute them. Because pirate code breaking, mutiny, must kill the mutinous ones. So there we have it. I love the scene though when Stede goes to see them in the jail cell. And they all look like children about to get scolded by their teacher. But to everyone's surprise and perhaps horror, Stede says nothing and just leaves them to their fate. And for a character like Stede, silence feels like a death blow. Even to the point where like Izzy tears up when that happens. Cause like it's so powerful coming from someone like Stede who likes to talk things out and explain them. So for him to not say a damn thing and just leave and looking disappointed as fuck is like a KO, you know?
And it's a very impactful scene because like as you said, like for Stede, a man of many words, like him being speechless because he's like the amount of rage and hatred he's feeling because they killed his boyfriend, like it's absolutely like insane. And I remember like watching this and like my heart just dropping, like between Stede not saying shit and then Izzy just like having like the single tear go down his face. I was like, oh my god, Izzy's crying and Stede's not talking. What bizarro world are we in today?
This is kind of like the thing that, you know, TV taught me. I've never had this, but where if your parent says they're disappointed in you, it's worse than them just being mad at you.
Mm-hmm.
So with Stede being silent, it means that he is beyond being even able or trying to resolve things at this point. He's just like, your fate is your fate at this point.
Yeah.
And like it's hard to like kind of give them the benefit of the doubt because like, you know, deep down Stede wants to give them the benefit of the doubt, but he's so like shrouded for the shock and horror of stumbling upon Ed's body that he can't think rationally. He can't think, okay, well, what, I don't know what happened when I was gone. There could have been like so many things. Maybe it was an accident, maybe it was this, that, the other, like maybe it was self-defense. Like he's not thinking that way, and I don't blame him because my first thing was like, my first thing if I was in his shoes was this was intentional because they didn't fucking like him, and as soon as I left they saw the opening to do so.
But also, they lied to him. They didn't tell him the
Yes.
truth, because if they would have sat him down and be like, hey, this is everything that's happened. We have had such a go. We had no other choice. We had to do this for everybody's safety. Because Ed does care about everyone's safety. Stede cares about everyone's safety. So hearing that Ed, like, yeah, he would still be concerned about Ed and not like that they did that. Hearing that they were in danger themselves, which is why it came down to that, I feel like he would have been more receptive to talking about it rather than feel betrayed by all of this.
I just think it's very... Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say it's very ironic because, like, my whole thing is, if you're going to lie to me, don't lie to my face. Because if you lie to me in general, I will most likely end up finding out about it, and I will be way more pissed off than I already am. So, and like, that's definitely like what Stede is going through, because like for the most part, they've had a good rapport. They've been like very honest and open. Sure, like some things may have been omitted, but omitting something and just not like bringing it up in casual conversation is 100% different than full on going, oh yeah, he went to doggy heaven, like talking to a kid essentially. So just like, and like the fact that like Izzy was the one that lied to him, while it is predictable, it definitely does still hurt, especially after like everything that like Izzy and Stede has been through, and like them forming like a bond of friendship and stuff like that. So I get both sides of like what Stede is dealing with, because it's a shitty situation in general, because like initially it was for self-defense. Like the crew, while they weren't 100% in the right, they still had some right to kind of defend themselves. And it's like since we keep bringing up dog analogies, it's like putting down a rabid dog. That's exactly what Stede. That's exactly what Ed was in this situation. And like it's so like I wish they didn't like kind of gloss over this, because like, and like we'll talk about like what Stede does next, but like it's just the fact that they glossed over it. They didn't really bring it up that much, or like have like a full on sit down conversation like Stede like usually does. And I know it's for a good reason, because like for one, there's not really like a time or place within like the next couple of episodes to do that. For two, that probably would have been more painful for Stede to hear something that he doesn't want to hear, just further proving that Ed isn't a good person. Like he's a good person in some aspects, but it would probably kill Stede to know that all of this was caused because of Stede leaving him.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I think another point to add that just adds to the complexity of this is a thing that keeps happening with Stede is the fact that Stede gets so wrapped up in Stede stuff that he can't see the bigger picture. And the bigger picture from the crew's point of view, who's been pirating way longer than him, is that if Zheng finds out, Zheng will kill all of them. And so like they have to lie to Stede about this, because if the word mutiny is discovered, like Zhang's gonna kill all of them. So like the crew is still in survival mode with Zheng at this point. And so they actually can't tell Stede what really happened, because they'll get killed again. And like the reason they're in this position with Ed unconscious and dying potentially is because their lives were threatened again. So like there's just a lot going on here, and Stede can't really see all of that because he's too fixated on the Ed piece of it, and he can't really see what's going on with the crew, which is, you know, Stede has those blinders a lot.
He's blinded by love.
Yeah,
for sure. Speaking of love, while that's all going on, Zhang is trying so hard to seduce Olu, and this is probably one of my favorite scenes. I love how much of a disaster she is. So first of all, she starts by interrogating him about his boatmance with Jim, and that phrase was beautiful. Then she ratchets this up by being like, please tell me more about this, and then like unsheaths her sword. And so poor Olu's like, oh god, she's gonna kill me. But really, she's trying to do some seductive sword play while ominous music is playing.
Which Zheng would definitely be into, like knife sword play, like 100%.
100%. But really, like she's doing all this because she wants to make out with him, and he's like, "Oh God, she's gonna kill me."
And so like realistically, she probably has never like had time to properly seduce somebody. So like this never. Is like her in her mind. She's like, "Oh, this is gonna get him going for sure." Not. This is gonna terrify the fuck out of him. He's gonna get a scare boner.
Yeah, because like basically she admits to Stede later at one point that she's dated a lot of pirates on wanted posters. So yeah, this probably worked with them. And Olu's like,
I would love to see Olu later trying to seduce her and trying to like match her energy. But right now she's basically doing what she does in battle. Like she started out talking, and then eventually she's like, well, shit, this isn't working. And just goes all in on the attack and starts kissing him. So when in doubt, just kiss him. That seems to be the best solution for her.
Yes.
Join me or die. Nah, fuck me or die.
Literally, that's Zheng. And I love the implication too with her with the sword. There's just the visual indicator that she's in charge of this interaction. Like she's, quote, like, got the masculine energy in this scene.
She's the dom.
She's the dom. She definitely is. Olu's into that. Let's be real. And I love their dynamic, and just please give them a spin-off. I want it so badly.
We need all the spin-offs on this show.
Seriously, there's so much potential here. So much.
I will say though, like, while like shit's hitting the fan on Zheng's ship, it's so wild that like they're just like casually making out, and Auntie comes and is like, "Pull your pants up," and he's like, "My pants are on."
Everyone's pants are on. I just love it. Yeah, so unfortunately for my dreams, Stede successfully leads the entire crew back to the Revenge, and poor Zheng at Zheng's expense, forcing Olu at this point to choose between the crew and Zheng. I hate it.
I mean, yes, it sucks in general, but he still has more of a connection to his crew. And I feel like he's the type of person that no matter what, he is going to be his family. That is his family. And eventually Zheng will become his family.
Just not right now.
Yeah, I feel like he'd always choose the greater amount of people over one.
I will say though, I have like 2 talking points about this. For one, I feel like it would definitely shatter and like destroy Zheng if she knew that the person that came and got Olu was Jim.
Yes.
Second point, while I do ship the fuck out of Olu and Zheng, like it still kind of makes me feel uncomfortable because like there's like that power balance there again, because like, and like he definitely like seemed like uncomfortably surprised during like the whole interaction of her trying to seduce him. So like it kind of makes me feel icky because it's like, does he really want this, or like is it once again just like, well, if I don't do this I might die, but I'm into her, but like I'm just like not really in the mood for that right now because like I just met her like a couple weeks ago, or like whatever the timeline is for this, because the timeline is so fucky for this show.
Yeah.
So Zoey, it's a great that you brought that point up, because it seems like every show that Theora and I talk about now has this dynamic, and this is the least worst one. So that's why I feel like we're not dying on that hill.
Yeah, the employer-employee shit, I fucking hate it so much.
But this is a lot more tame than the other ones. And because I feel like she is softer around him and does let him have more control in the fact that no one would have been in that room with the scrolls and the war map, but she let him in. So she's letting him in. He has a little more leeway than other people, whereas at least for the other shows that it was like really join me or die. With her, I feel like she would not be able to kill him whatsoever.
That and also their relationship started without the power imbalance. That's why I have less of a problem with them, because their relationship really started with Susan the soup vendor and Olu. Like that's why I feel less weird about it. In this scene. Yes, she's definitely you can easily read it as she's pulling rank as captain, when really she's like, I don't know, this is how you seduce pirates, I don't understand. And I think her like incompetence in the scene also makes it less like my captain is threatening me into like making out with her kind of thing.
And then she also pulls back when she notices that that's not what he actually wants. So like she drops the act. So I do feel like Olu does have more control in this situation. But I want to bring up that her face when she sees that Olu was on that ship is heartbreaking. She's like, I finally like this dude. I feel like she didn't connect with the other guys as much. I think
it's probably also transactional.
That also a bit more just attracted to like the badness, where she's like, no, I really like this guy. This guy is sweet. She's finally seeing that someone can care for her, where I feel like her original marriage was probably arranged like
Yeah.
Stede's
Possibly.
was.
Especially because she's from Asia, and that's a very common thing is arranged marriages in Asia as well as like the Middle East, and like it's very common like all around the world, but like in those two places in particular, like that's really where it thrives even to this day, unfortunately. So it wouldn't be too much of a stretch to say that her first marriage was arranged, and that's probably where like everything started off at. But I also find it interesting, like her attraction to Olu, because in reality, she's most likely never met a pirate who acts like him, and that's another thing that adds to the appeal of it. Because as Theora said, she always dates people off of wanted posters, so like it's always like the bad boy aspect, and like here's Olu, a fucking precious teddy bear, and she's like, "Ooh, I need me some of that."
She does. The other thing too to add to Kaitlyn's point about later on in the episode, yeah, when she the realization that he left is that this is what Auntie was trying to warn her about. She was like, "This is how this is going to play out. Like you have to think, and she wasn't thinking. And that's when Auntie's like, "I could say I told you so," and Jay's like, "Well, don't." Like it just I think that she's like, oh, wow, I was being stupid. But what's interesting about Zheng is that, again, this is what happened this is where the foil with Blackbeard comes in again. This is what happened between Ed and Stede, right? Where Stede abandons Ed. How does Zheng react? Business as usual. Like, Zheng, like, deals with her feelings and is like, this fucking sucks, but, like, doesn't burn the world down, just keeps going about her pirate queen life and, like, just is sad by herself rather than taking it out on the world.
It's because in reality, she doesn't have the privilege to do that. Because if she did that, she would lose her entire, like, quote unquote, empire that she built up from the ground running. Like, yeah, she probably had, like, some assistance from, like, her prior husband, who was also a pirate. But, like, in reality, she didn't conquer China with her husband. She conquered China by herself. Like, this is her entire empire. And, like, I do like the aspect that Auntie just kind of, like, let her make her mistakes rather than like beating a dead horse essentially, because she realized nothing I can say, no matter how much no matter how long I've known her, will sway her opinion on this man. She's infatuated with him. She loves him to death. She would do anything for him, just based on like what we've seen before and based on what Auntie's seen. So she knows like nothing she's gonna say is gonna change that. She doesn't want to waste her breath. She's a very tactful person, but she knows when to like admit defeat. And this is definitely like one of those cases where she has to admit defeat. And I think that kind of stemmed from uh in the book room with like the scrolls and everything, and like Auntie being like, okay, well, she trusts him enough to see like our battle map, even though he didn't know what the fuck it was and thought it was just a mess. She let him see the scrolls, everything like that, like a very intimate part of the ship. He had given permission to go in there. And I think that's why I said like I think that's where it stemmed, for the fact of like Auntie being like, all right, well, she loves this man, so I'm just gonna drop it. If something happens, I will be there for her. I will potentially say I told you so, but she'd probably kill me if I did.
She definitely would. And the other thing I just want to add, just to wrap this up, is like back to the foiling with Blackbeard in the way that Zhang responds. Because I agree with you. Like, if she responded the way Ed did, burn the world down, yeah, she'd lose her entire empire. But the fact that she internalizes it and is just sad, it's a very like feminine coded response versus Ed's response is a very masculine coded response, which is to put your feelings outward and burn the world down, versus Zhang, who's going to internally deal with it and like beat herself up. So it's another contrast between the two of them, is how they respond to their like boyfriends leaving them, basically. Okay, I feel like we talk about Zhang all day, so we'll move on. Back to Ed.
It's probably
so
for
Ed
the
at this
best that we
point,
don't have her on the show.
I know, I love her so much. Anyway,
I'm working on it. I'm working on it, actually.
Okay, hopefully. Okay, so Ed finds out at this point he's in the gravy basket, aka purgatory. We knew that, but Ed just found that out. And he decides, and he has to decide the ultimatum: do I live or die? Because he's in the in between. But really, it's too late. That this was a whole like a prolonging of like Ed already made his decision a long time ago, and really this was a prolonging of him getting to that decision because Ed has been scared of this decision. So Ed was going to decide to like end it because he hates himself, he feels unlovable, and he's too fucking scared to do anything about it. So this manifests in Purgatory as he's suddenly at the top of this cliff with a rope tied around his waist and Ben holding this boulder. And so into the sea Ed goes. While this is happening in our world, on the living plane of the living, Stede is devastated and like crying over Ed's body. And he lifts the face cover off of Ed. And then we see Ed in purgatory in the sea, like kind of like jolt, like things are getting brighter. And so Stede starts pouring his heart out, telling Ed that he's sorry, that he was scared, he messed this up. And as he's like saying his truths, Ed starts fighting in purgatory because he's going down, and then he starts fighting it. So like he's regaining the will to live while like Stede is basically giving him a reason to live. Because part of Ed's fear is like, no one's waiting for me. That's what he was scared of. But like he can hear the voice that like somebody wants him back there. And that person is Stede. And so at some point his hand starts twitching, and Stede notices that his body's moving. So he grabs his hand and then starts really seriously begging Ed to come back to him. And while the begging is happening, Ed sees a light up top. And that's when the rope, he was fighting the rope, trying to get it to unwind, and it wasn't. But once he sees the light, it comes undone on its own. Like the choice is happening, and it's really cool. I like the sequence they do here. And then MerStede comes to the rescue.
Because of course he does.
Of course he does. That's his guardian.
But when I saw the rope, I didn't notice that he was trying to free himself, but it still works. I feel like the rope is basically the sign that Ed is freeing himself from his past actions, but he can only do that when Stede is around.
That's interesting that you mentioned that, because the way I interpreted the rope was the rope and cannonball or whatever was attached to it. I think it was a cannonball that was attached to it, or boulder, yeah. But that just kind of like bringing him from like one realm to another. So he's like kind of like descending to the depths of hell. And then because he's in a coma, like that's like very apparent. He's in a coma right now. And most coma patients are able to hear when somebody's talking to them. So it's like it definitely ties in like what both of y'all said, because Stede's there like being like begging, pleading for him to come back, even though like Stede's under the impression that he's fucking dead. So like it's like the symbolism in this show is like so on point. Like I absolutely adore it. They did a wonderful job with it.
Yeah. I wish I understood symbolism more. I'm gonna work on that.
I also like how like Ed's like on like the brink of death, and like he starts like remembering things, and like it's supposed to like symbolize like his life flashing before his eyes, which makes it even cuter because it implies that Stede is his life, and that's why everything he's remembering is like the majority of it is purely just Stede. Like, yeah, maybe like some of the other crew, but like for the most part, it's specifically just fixated on Stede. So like I think that was a nice little way of saying that like Stede is his like the light of his life. Like when his life is flashing before his eyes, it's gonna be Stede. So I thought that was just so nice. But I also hate how the intimate moment was ruined between like Ed's life flashing before his eyes, Stede begging and pleading and crying for Ed to come back, and then you just see like the abomination of MerStede coming into frame. Like that, I just remember getting like so caught off guard about that.
I don't know what that was.
I'm sorry, Kaitlynn.
I mean, I knew what it was, but I don't know why it showed up.
So yeah, I agree with everything you're saying. And a part that I really love is like when MerStede does show up, you see Ed is just become so elated and just like full of life when he sees him, because like to him he's like, Stede is coming to get me, like, you know, like he didn't abandon me, I'm not alone. Everything he was afraid of just gets like absolved basically, and he's like, okay, I can do this, I can go on. And side note, when Ed is underwater, what witchcraft made his wig look that good? It's just utter perfection, well, even underwater.
Don't get Zoey started on this.
It's so good.
Fair, we now know that, which if you watch the Gypsy interview, you'll get more inside edition of MerStede. But we now know that he was in a pool, and pools have different buoyancies than the ocean. So it makes sense that like his hair was kind of flowing like magically, because that's what happens when you're in a pool compared to like the ocean, because of how dense the water is and like the salt and everything like that, compared to like chlorinated water. So it makes more sense now knowing that. And like part of me kind of assumed it was a pool, but at the same time I was like, no, it's big enough budget to where like I could see them doing it in like the actual ocean.
Oh no, you need an even bigger budget for that. Also, I feel like that's way more dangerous in general.
Oh, 100%. Yeah,
So,
no, 100%.
I think most things are filmed in these tanks. Like even to go to where these tanks are, it'd be expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Also, like you're more guaranteed a clear shot because like things are in the ocean.
Yeah, there'd
Like
be that,
plastic.
and then you'd have to make sure that everybody was certified for like dive. It would be
Diving.
too much. I think everything happens in these pools.
Anyway,
Looks really
love
cool.
his wig. So, okay. So then basically bottom line, all it takes is for Stede's love to pull Ed out of purgatory, and him taking that breath is like where we end the episode.
Mm-hmm.
So good. So good. So many good things happen in this episode. It's kind of amazing.
And like I think like one of the most like healing moments in the show was the fact of Stede still going back and like rescuing his crew and like jailbreaking them even after like knowing that they killed his boyfriend. So like I thought that was a very nice touch because like Stede finally gets like out of his own mind and is like, all right, well at the end of the day, if I don't save them, nobody else will, and they will all absolutely die. And this is kind of a weird hill to die on because, yeah, I'm still pissed the fuck off. But, like, I think it's more so like he's kind of realizing, like, there's always going to be two sides to a story. Something else must have had happened. So I have to give them the benefit of the doubt and at least, like, save them. So one day I can know the full story, even if it pains me to know it. So, like, it's definitely, like, a multi-layered thing. But I thought it was, like, I thought it was very nice and like very Stede coded for the fact of like, okay, well I'm very upset with you kids, but we're still gonna go get ice cream anyways because you earned it.
So true. Well,
that brings us to the end of this episode.
It sure does. So we tried to cover as much as we could. If we missed things or you have any behind the scenes stuff, like please leave it in the comments. We love hearing from you. And we just freaking love this episode. But don't worry, we will keep continuing. And in our next episode, we will start with episode 4, and we'll see how far we get. I wish
season 4.
I know, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Episode 4 of season 2. And we'll see how far we get. And with that, let's jump into episode 4. So episode 4 picks up right where we left off with episode 3. Stede is amazed that Ed came back from the brink of death. And Ed immediately headbutts Stede, which, fair.
Yeah, 100% just like Ed dying, coming back from death. And then like Stede being all like mushy and romantic. And then like it just cuts to, I think you almost broke my nose.
Yes, what a cold open. It's fantastic. So Ed's back, and the crew has some feelings about that, given he almost killed them all. So Stede is being the diplomatic captain that he is, because now he's captain numero uno, not co-captain. He's just the captain. And so the way he handles the situation is he lets the crew vote. Do they rehabilitate Ed, or do they actually desert him on some island for real? And so the crew votes just to keep him like locked up for now and probably get rid of him later. And much to Stede's dismay, because he was like, oh man, just got my boyfriend back.
To be fair, this man is pretty volatile, because you never know what the hell he is gonna do. Like,
yeah,
a loose cannon, if you will.
There it is, directing all his rage at the mast of the ship. Of all the crew members, though, Buttons, of course, knows what the hell went on. And he's like, you were in the gravy basket and had visions, didn't you? Been there, brother. Which, like, where are those scenes?
Okay, so when every single time I hear gravy basket, anyone else think of that red fry basket type thing? And then with just gravy oozing out of the sides of it? No? Just me?
I think that might just be you, Kaitlynn.
That's definitely just you.
But like, I just hear gravy. I'm thinking, you know, that the typical fry basket thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. They just fill with gravy.
That is a very ineffective container for gravy.
It's why it's oozing out of it.
My brain thinks of biscuits and gravy. That's where my brain goes when I hear that.
Biscuits and gravy is really
But
good.
it says basket, Theora.
I know, but I can't see why you would put gravy in a basket. So, like, my brain goes...
poutine.
Yeah.
They invented poutine.
Right. They're inventing constant things. I mean, there's your poutine. That would be in one of those baskets you're talking about, Kaitlynn. Maybe that's where your brain's going. But it's on fries, so... Thanks,
but
Canada.
It's still in the basket.
I mean, I think gravy basket is like a perfect term for like going to purgatory, because like while it's an ineffective like container to hold gravy, that's also like the beauty of it, because you're in between like realms essentially. So like reality is like leaking out of the basket. It's the gravy. So I think it's a pretty fitting analogy.
No notes. Well put together, Zoey. That's what it is. Okay, so of the crew, Izzy is not handling anything super well. He's basically drinking his life away at this point, because this is his version of purgatory, where he's like down a leg, Ed's still alive, Stede's back. Where does that leave Izzy in the scheme of like the crew, and like what is my life is basically where Izzy's at. So he's just drinking himself into oblivion to kind of escape that. And Stede finds him basically doing that. So and Stede is like, "Hey Izzy, we're all voting and you weren't present, so I need your vote on what to do with Ed, like banish, yay or nay." And it's revealed during this conversation that Izzy is the one who kept Ed's body on board. I mean, kind of like speculated on that in the last episode, so I'll speculate here. The other part that I found really enlightening in this conversation is Izzy's advice to Stede, because he's at the point where he's kind of resigned and facing reality. And his advice to Stede when asked, like, what do you want to do with Ed, is let the rotten leg cool off. Like, AKA, give the crew time to calm down before you're pushing this topic onto them, which is pretty solid advice, actually, because think about the hell they just went through. Ed is the one who put them all there. So yeah, their immediate reaction is going to be, fuck you. So like, maybe let people cool off and then ask this question. And the interaction between them, I love the comparison between Stede and Izzy. It's very like golden retriever, black cat energy anytime they're in a room together. And they're even color coded that way. It's particularly in the scene, which I love.
It's really cute.
It is.
And then, you know, like, there'll be like the very few instances they get along and are adorable together. Most often not, but you know, they'll work on it. I don't think Izzy would ever turn his back on Ed fully. Like, he cares about him, and honestly, I think he considers him his best friend. Even if it isn't the typical friendship, I don't think either one's capable of having a normal type friendship. Also, this is for Theora. Sorry, Zoey.
Very good.
I think Fortnite is Ed and Izzy coded.
Oh,
see, I saw you post that on Tumblr, and I have so much brain rot. I thought you were talking about the first-person shooter game.
Oh, I posted that on
Does that
Twitter. Theora posted down bad on Tumblr.
Oh, my bad.
Which down bad is an Ed and Stede song. Changed my mind.
No,
burning the world down, ships. It's all there.
So basically, Taylor Swift did her new album for Our Flag Means Death.
Yeah, that's what we're getting at. But also, does Fortnite the game fit Ed and Izzy?
I mean, it's just like a like you have like, I don't really know how to like describe it. Like, it's just you can do like duos, trios, like squads, stuff like that, and like it's you like fighting against like other people. So it's like a MMO first person shooter.
So you literally thought I was talking about the game.
So
yes, I just thought you messed the spelling up, and I was like, you know, that's kind of on brand for Kaitlynn to like think it's like a different spelling for it. I didn't even like, this shows how disconnected I am from Taylor Swift, because I was like, it has to be the video game, but that also doesn't make sense for Kaitlynn because she's not really into gaming that much.
But also, what you're describing gives me like Jim Archie vibes. It could be a pair, it could be three. There's something there. Let us know in the comments.
I did want to point out though, with the the whole like Izzy's never gonna turn his back fully on Ed. Yeah, because he's fucking codependent. He doesn't know how to do that. Like he might turn his back fully on Ed once he like figures out who he is as an individual, not just like with the whole like like when him and Stede were like having the I know him better than you do, but he only knows Blackbeard. He doesn't really know Ed. And like that's part of like the codependency, because it's purely like he went from being like narcissistic and manipulative towards Ed to still being codependent, but trying to figure out who the fuck he is without Blackbeard. Because he's kind of come to terms now in season 2 that Blackbeard is now officially gone after his near-death experience, as we see in like a later episode when he's like tying up like the Blackbeard garb. But yeah, so it's definitely like a multi-layered thing with Izzy. So
yeah, absolutely. So back to the crew. So the when the vote was put to the crew says, "Banish that bitch." And Stede's not happy about this, but like he's like, "Well, let them vote," and Ed's like, "Fine, I'll just go along with it." And so he's like huffing and puffing as he's like getting off the ship. And first of all, Frenchie tries to give him a sandwich, and he like smacks it away. And why does everybody keep rejecting Frenchie's banishment sandwiches? I don't understand. I'm sure they're really good, but that's like the second time this happens.
I'll take the sandwich.
To be fair, I don't know if I'd be too keen on taking a sandwich from a bard. Roach is the cook.
Frenchie I meant Roach. I'm sorry, Roach. I apologize.
Oh, okay.
I didn't mean to. I meant to say Roach. I apologize. Sorry, Roach. Roach is always trying to give send-off sandwiches, and everyone's always like, no. And they like, I think Izzy's the one that like slapped it into the water.
I mean, it's kind of like a slap in the face. It's like, are you fucking serious? A sandwich? I'm getting disconnected from the crew, and you're giving me a fucking sandwich, like that type of deal.
So but I bet you 30 minutes goes by and they're gonna wish they had that damn sandwich.
Right? They're starving. They have no money. They're like, damn, I should have took the damn sandwich. I'm sure it was good too. Anyway, so part of this conversation is, okay, so then Ed has to face Stede for like a hot minute. And Ed says, "You're no fucking mermaid." And Stede's just like, what? Because they have not talked. And at this point, like, Ed is still like in the in-between. So like Buttons later fills in Stede about like, listen, he's in between life and death right now. Like his mental state, he's not fully present. His mental state's not fully here right now. Ed doesn't know what's real anymore. And so like I love that he just like has this line and Stede's like, what?
And you know damn well that's like a line, like that's like a convo that's always going to stick with Stede, because he's like even after Buttons explains it, he's still gonna be like, what the fuck did he mean by I'm no fucking mermaid? Because until Ed tells Stede about like the apparition of MerStede, like he's not gonna get it. He's gonna be like, what the fuck?
Right. They've never talked about mermaids before, so yeah, it's very like out of nowhere for Stede.
I feel like after Ed leaves, Stede is probably just going around the ship being like, mermaid? And then and just like mouthing it.
Yeah, just like muttering to himself. Oh yeah, 100%. That happens off screen.
Just rocking on back screen, and forth.
Yeah, just like mermaid. But on screen, Ed goes off to the island that they leave him at. And he's clearly not okay. Like, not okay. First thing he does is kicks a bunch of trees because he's mad. And then he comes across, quote, a wolf, which is a bunny, and explains, and he's having this heart-to-heart with the bunny. And I love this conversation because he's like, yes, I found my new friend. And he's telling him, or I don't know, the rabbit, the story of his tattoos, which is an intimate thing, like tattoos and the meaning behind them. And he's talking about the spider on his hand. And I do like this explanation where he says, basically, he's like, I don't even fucking like spiders. I got this because I'm afraid of spiders. And I thought if I'd see it, it would help me get over my fear of spiders, like exposure therapy. But then he's like, which is why I always wear gloves, so then I don't have to see this. So it didn't work. But like, I love the thought process of like why he did it.
I'm also glad you mentioned that. I'll continue my thought after Kaitlynn.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, as somebody who's like heavily modified, like I have like a shit ton of fucking tattoos. Like I have a shit ton. Some like you can't see because of the camera, but whatever. But like I can definitely vouch like between like piercings, body mods, and hair. I do that to not only express myself, but to make myself more comfortable in my own skin, especially as a non-binary person. So I've related so fucking hard to like Ed going, yeah, I got this spider tattoo because I'm scared of spiders, but I wear gloves anyways. Uh, like I definitely get that because like I tattoo and like I pierce like parts of my body that like I'm not comfortable with. So like for a while I was rocking like a belly button piercing. Did not have the anatomy for that whatsoever. I needed a floating navel, but that's a different story. Um, but yeah, like I like how they show that. Like I know they probably didn't have the intentions of like wanting of like having people relate to that specifically. Like they possibly could have because this is a very like relatable show on multiple levels. But like I just thought that was like very cute. And especially the fact that he's telling this to a wolf and it's just like a bunny rabbit, which is like even funnier just for the sheer fact of like Stede is very much so a bunny rabbit in this situation, and Ed's the wolf.
That's so good. You're so right. Because yeah, this is replacement Stede, the animal edition.
Pretty much.
I find it interesting that he has to cover up his hands like with gloves because it's like he can never be comfortable with himself. He always has to cover something up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also think the trauma is becoming too much for him. There are so many things affecting him since the past, but he's never really had the chance to fully reflect on them until he met Stede, because life was go, 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 and life became more slower once he got to Stede, because Stede was not doing much pirating, let's be real.
No.
Except that one, like, tin can with a plan in it. Good for him.
He's a real pirate, Kaitlynn.
Yes, he is. He got that tin can with a flower. Okay, yeah. So once he was with Stede, life also became more light. So it wasn't full of death and raiding. A little bit, but more it was like just playful back and forth teaching. Then when he felt abandoned by Stede, it was his breaking point, and all the trauma just came rushing back all at once, causing this Blackbeard 2.0 that was even worse, and creating a delusional Ed trying to find any way to cope with all of this going on.
Yeah.
And I think it's also like a nice point that you brought up that like he can never feel comfortable in his skin, because I don't know if y'all have noticed, but I kind of like noticed this while like rewatching it for like the notes and everything. But when we first meet Ed, like Ed as Blackbeard, like he's of course like in the Blackbeard garb, but the more time he spends with Stede and like the happier he is, he wears less clothing, indicating that he feels safe, he feels like happy, like he's content with himself. And when like as you said, like when the trauma comes back, that's when he starts covering up more, kind of like a security blanket of like, okay, well, I'm protecting myself by covering up, which is such a like powerful thing in of itself, because like that's how like a bunch of like feminine presenting people can relate to that, with like going out by themselves or whatever the case may be, of just trying to like protect, like cover up by protecting, because oh well, are you sure you weren't asking for it because you were wearing that outfit? Like there's
yes.
like I said, this show is so fucking layered, because like you can relate to it, and like that's like the beauty of like having your own like connotations and like finding your own like meaning for this, because they didn't have to like throw in like the little symbolism of Ed like covering up when like he's having big boy feelings, and like going like reintroducing the trauma and stuff like that, and then showing the parallel of him like having little to no, or not little to no clothing, but like less clothing than usual when he's around Stede and he's content and happy. Like that's such like a good like Easter egg, if you will, because like not a lot of people will notice that. I didn't sure as shit didn't notice that the first time I was watching, because I was so enamored and shocked and surprised. But it was a nice, like it made me happy seeing that, because I was like, wow, that I definitely feel that like a lot.
Yes, clothing tells a story. I'm so glad you brought that up. Thank you for pointing that out. All right, so back to Ed and his rabbit friend. So unfortunately, this friendship was doomed from the start, and little bunny best friend gets poached by some lesbians. So in walks Mary Read and Anne Bonnet. Or Bonnie. Is that right? My bad. Sorry. I guess I had Stede on the brain when I wrote this.
Yeah. I was
and
like,
Bonnie.
it's really the same last name. That's the same. And then I read it. It's Bonnie. And it's like, oh, okay, Theora's just.
That's my bad. I was listening and wrote it down.
I do want to mention a quick little side note about the little rabbit with him going, "You'll always be safe with me." Rabbit gets snatched. It gave me immediately the same energy, and it's totally fine if y'all aren't familiar with this clip. I will send you this clip if you don't know it. But there was this streamer, I believe she was, I want to say it was The Last of Us, but I'm not 100% sure. It probably isn't The Last of Us. She was playing some type of game. And it had a cutscene where there was cute little bunny was hopping along, and then an arrow just goes straight through it. And like she's like, and that's purely like how I felt with that. I was like, oh, this is so cute. And then like they just come in and
why is it always got to be a bunny?
Right.
All right. So now we have the lesbians, Mary, Reed, and Anne Bonny. And these were also real pirates with like that actually sailed together and like have an alleged relationship with each other / documented relationship with each other. And interesting that like in real life, these two pirates met because of Calico Jack of all people, which I thought was interesting. And so, yeah, they were speculated to be in a relationship the way that like Stede and Edward, but I think there's more documented stuff about these two.
Mm-hmm. And they were roommates.
And they were boatmates. No, they were. And they had to like pose as men to like be on the ship and then like discover. I think one of them was in a relationship with the captain and then the other one joined.
One was the wife.
Yeah, something like that. And then.
Because I did read the link that you put in here.
Yeah. And then they figured out they're both women and like, yeah.
Yeah. So I believe from what I read is the wife of Calico Jack?
I don't remember.
Maybe. But the wife of the captain on the ship, at least, started liking this guy. And the husband was getting jealous of the relationship. But then eventually I forget who, but the pirate was like, revealed their true identity. And then they became this like power couple. But their journey reminds me of Jim's. In the article, it says, Reed and Bonnie became less cautious about exposing their biological sexes over time. As they garnered the respect of the crew, they were able to dress and live as women in their downtime without negative repercussions, only donning their breeches and caps for battle. So it just reminds me of like being comfortable with yourself on the ship and just not caring.
Yeah, and I don't know if I mentioned this before, but it doesn't hurt to like just repeat this. Back then, women on sea were seen as like a bad omen. So that's why canonically many women who wanted to be pirates, they tend to dress more masculine, like Jim did. So I thought that was a very like cool little like history Easter egg that Jim's character, while being female presenting, they still dress like a man. Just because like I said, they were bad omens. None of the guys wanted them on the ship. That's also why it was very like queer coded for pirates in general, because obviously they couldn't have like a woman on the ship that they just had sex with on a daily, because that's bad juju, that like their ship's gonna go down. So it always makes my little like historian heart happy seeing stuff like that.
And I do love how they keep bringing in like queer pirates into the show. I love it. It just keeps getting queerer like from here on out. I love it so much. So speaking of the lesbians, Buttons and Stede also like wander onto the island because Button needs a bowl. And so they run into the lesbians. And the reason he needs this bowl is he's trying to find the perfect vessel for his avian transmography, which is the spell that Auntie gave him, because he's like, sea witch, do not be like held back by this mortal body, and like gave him the spell. So he's trying to get the spell so he can be one with his lady love, the ocean. And so they end up at the antique shop, which is run by the lesbians, basically. And Ed shows up because Ed ran into one of them, and here they are. And Mary and Anne like immediately pick up on the ex-boyfriend vibes, because Stede says we were shipmates and Ed says ex-shipmates, which I love that. I love all the boat metaphors. I think it's so funny.
Ed is really salty right now.
Oh my god. Well, yeah, he's just like, he was just in purgatory. Stede's not a mermaid, so he's pissed off.
I will say though, the immediate thought that I had about the avian transmography spell was, I wonder what type of bird he would be, and I have an inkling that it would be a seagull. So my heart immediately went, I wonder if he would try to find Livy since they share the trauma of Carl passing. And like that kind of made my heart happy thinking about that.
I mean, we do see him turn into a seagull.
Yeah.
My also
like,
thought was like, after this, I was like, were they sea witches too?
Could you imagine?
Mm.
Are sea witches seagulls?
I guess in the eyes of Button.
We'll never know. All right, so meanwhile, the crew is dealing with the bad vibes on their revenge. Because, like, everyone's traumatized, basically. So Lucius, and the crew, and Izzy have all been personally victimized by Blackbeard. The crew and Lucius are feral as fuck. And Roach, Weejon, and Black Pete notice this, and they're like, well, this ship is a safe place. Let's make them feel valued. So they basically get a piñata and a 3-tier cake. And this goes so poorly because all of those things trigger the trauma of Blackbeard, like the wedding crashing and just all of the murder and just like mayhem that they did. And so it does not go well.
It's really sad that a 3-tiered cake brings so much terror.
Right.
But we know that the split crew had 2 very different experiences while apart. And both were traumatic in their own right because Stede's people lost everything.
Yes.
While Ed's crew was just being like verbally, physically, mentally abused. But this scene really shows you the contrast of their experiences in full force. Stede's crew is trying to get Ed's crew to have fun, and everything that was once fun, because they were at all the same point until the split, has turned into trauma for them. And this is another reason why it's good that Ed sponsored Calypso's birthday party.
Oh, yeah.
It helps them... Yeah, it helps them to realize that parties are fun and you don't have to worry about trauma until, trauma happens. But we will get there in that episode.
That is a great episode. Other thing, too, that the piñata was weird for me. That kind of came out of nowhere. In terms of, like, we've never seen a piñata in the show up to this point. Not that it's weird. The cake, though, to me was, like, kind of a callback to... in season 1, I think, where they ran out of oranges because Stede was like, make this orange cake that uses 40 oranges. So, like, the crew had celebrated before with a cake. So the fact that, like, Roach made a cake, he was kind of be like, hey, like, it's a special occasion. This cake is just for you. Whereas I made that cake for Stede. Like, so, like, that was kind of like, hey, we've done this before. And it's just the way they react. It's like, ooh, okay. What happened?
Purely Vietnam flashbacks going on.
Totally, like, super, super PTSD, like, all of them. So that's all happening while the crew is trying to, like, work things out. Izzy comes in with the unicorn legs, like, because he's been pissed off at this unicorn the whole time, and he, like, broke the legs off and throws them down on the floor and screams in triumph that he has bested this beast, basically. And while he's, like, proclaiming his triumph, he accidentally breaks the current peg leg that he has. It just, like, this is, like, Izzy's, like, lowest point, I would say. And the crew offers to help him up and, like, but he is like, fuck off, and, like, crawls away, basically. And I think this is when the crew really sees that, like, oh shit, he's in worse shape than all of us. Like, yeah. Izzy's been through more hell than all of us.
Also, a little BTS moment. Vico had posted a reel like a while ago, and it was like of them and like the crew and everything, and it just like it's like them like on set and stuff, and it shows like Izzy, and this is like the peg leg saga and everything, and it's only just like a little like sock like thing they like pull up over his calf. So it's like green screen solo on there. And I thought that was like the most hilarious shit ever, just seeing that, because I figured they did like some green screen of some sort. I just couldn't like fully figure out like what kind of like garb they put on for him. So like it shows like it's hilarious. If you guys want to see what I'm talking about, please go to Vico's Instagram. It's like the Puerto Rican ninja or something, and it's hilarious. It's amazing.
That's so fucking funny. That makes us even better that that's really what
Right.
Izzy, the character, was doing. Okay, so at this point, I want to talk about Izzy because I have a lot to say about him. And this scene is heartbreaking, but also like really revealing the scene in the next scene about Izzy's journey. So to me, Izzy is synonymous with repression. He has had this obsession with hating the unicorn for quite a while. And I wonder if this was really a big metaphor for Izzy's own self-hatred. Because in the next scene, he's alone in his room, and we get this shot of him looking at himself in a mirror, which mirrors mean like looking at your inner self, like without the bullshit, just a moment of truth. And he basically looks at himself and he says, "You, what even are you?" Which I think is really, really telling, because up till this point, Izzy has just been stuck in the shadows of Blackbeard and is literally the only reason the legend of Blackbeard is still alive. Because let's be real, Ed was losing it and losing interest in Blackbeard, like when we first meet both of them in the beginning of the series. And because Izzy has spent all of his time propping up Blackbeard, Izzy seems to neglect his own wants and needs, and I think that results in a lot of repression for him. And I think that with Izzy, on the surface, at least in the beginning, there's like a lot of thing that queer people can kind of identify with when it comes to Izzy, because like repression, self-hatred is not an uncommon experience for queer people, like, unfortunately. But with Izzy, though, the more that the show goes on, I really don't think Izzy's queer coded. I think there's actually just like unexplored queerness in Izzy, and I think that really comes out in the Calypso's birthday bash episode. And I will talk way more about that when we get there, because I think it's such a special moment and the pinnacle of just like Izzy's arc, really.
Yeah, that episode is a turning point for his character in general.
Yeah, that's like the apex, and then he starts like kind of going down. So back to this scene. So while he's in the room, kind of like having a midlife crisis, basically, the crew is making peace with each other. The thing that bonds them is helping Izzy, which I think is so beautiful. That like instead of like partying or just blowing off steam, they bond over helping Izzy, like another one of their crew members, and they do that by taking the wooden horse leg and making it into a peg leg for him, basically, that's much more stable, that he can stand on without like any other like crutch or anything, which is honestly probably preferable for Izzy. But it's so beautiful that they put so much effort into it. Like, Wee John was like, is it weight bearing? Like, Jim made it gold. Like, they put so much thought and effort into doing this for Izzy, which is so cute and beautiful. And when Izzy receives it and he gets the note, he just cries. Like, we've never seen Izzy like full out cry. We've seen him tear up, but never just like emotionally let it all out. Yeah. And I think what's so big about this moment is that this is the first time Izzy has ever truly felt seen as Izzy ever.
Also, felt love. I don't think he has ever truly felt love before. I don't think we know much about his backstory.
No,
but
he's been Blackbeard. That's all we know. That's what I mean. He's been in the shadow of Blackbeard. That is all we know about Izzy.
But even on the ship, he was more distanced from the others since the very beginning. Because he hung onto Blackbeard 1.0 that didn't even exist when we first met him. But Blackbeard definitely wasn't giving him affection. But this action from the crew showed him that people can care for him, and his codependent relationship with Blackbeard wasn't healthy because it was one-sided. And he was just giving so much and trying to keep things the same that he was missing out on these other great relationships he could have had.
The other thing about the Izzy Blackbeard relationship is it's the employee-employer relationship. Like, he was basically, like, if you think about it in a modern world, Blackbeard's the CEO, like, Izzy's like, or like, Blackbeard's the president, Izzy's the vice president. So with that being said, like, yeah, there's a power imbalance with Ed and Izzy, obviously. But that same power imbalance exists with Izzy and the crew because he's their immediate supervisor, right? So, like, because of that, because he always had to maintain that air of authority when barking out the orders that Blackbeard would give out, he's the enforcer. He's like, whatever Blackbeard says, I have to make sure it happens. So, like, he was always seen as an authority figure by the crew. So, like, that in and of itself creates distance and would make it harder for Izzy to actually, like, meld with the crew and, like, really be seen as one of them, because the crew sees themselves as the crew, and then they see Izzy as the second in command and Blackbeard as the first in command. So, like, that also isolated him a lot. And so what makes this moment so beautiful is that he finally realizes that Izzy, not Blackbeard's second in command, Izzy, is worthy of respect and love all on his own. And he doesn't need to be in that authoritative shadow of Blackbeard to shine. He can just, because the note says, for the new unicorn, like, unique, singular, like, he can just be Izzy and that's okay, is basically what they're saying. And they're like, we see you and we respect you just as who you are. Like, you deserve love. And that is just, I don't have words for how, like, beautiful that is. I just love it so much.
I'm glad he's finally getting to experience people caring about him.
He definitely deserves it too. Like, well, like, while he was the villain for like the hot minute, we now know that the reason why he was the villain in the first place is because he was struggling with his own self-identity, and he was lashing out as a result of that, which I really can't fault him for that, because like, not knowing who you are is insanely fucking scary, especially when you've been in a relationship, i.e. him and Ed being like captain and first mate for so long, that you kind of lose a sense of who you are as a person, especially in like situations like this where it's not like the most healthy relationship. It's quite toxic, because like, me and my boyfriend, we've been together for 5 years. We still have our own like senses of who we are as a person separate from the relationship, because our relationship is healthy. We grow with each other, we thrive together. Whereas Ed and Izzy's relationship is like the antithesis of that, because it's like they don't really care about each other's growth, because it's shown that like Ed is interested in things and Izzy's just like, that's fucking stupid. Or like, if like Izzy gets excited about something or tries to like be genuine and apologize, Ed is like, you're not being sincere, you're just trying to manipulate me, what the fuck are you doing? So it's very like combative the entire time, which adds to even more so of the codependence between the two of them. Because like, even when we saw like in season 1 with them like banishing Izzy and like that setting off like a chain reaction, I wanted to go with him, but purely because he's codependent. He didn't really know who he would be without his right hand man, and he's in kind of like foreign territory, so to speak, because the only other people that are there is Fang and the other guy. I feel so bad for not knowing the other guy's name. But to be fair, he also doesn't get much screen time compared to Fang.
No, and then he gets killed off, and I forget his name too. We're like, here's Archie. Yeah.
The replacement.
Yeah. But yeah, I totally agree with you. It's just, and a lot of people are just like, I really hated Izzy in season 1 and blah, blah, blah. And why do you have to be like that? And it's like, that arc had to exist. Without it, you wouldn't be here. Like, we had to, like, he was the villain of season 1. And like, he had to be, in order to get the payoff of this scene we're seeing right now. Like, I like that they didn't rush Izzy the villain into Izzy the human, like with full feelings and like with autonomy, and too soon. I like that they paced it and did it this way, because it makes it more impactful, because they wrote it like this. So thank you, writers.
100%, yeah. And like, it definitely, I could only imagine how like validating this whole thing was for Izzy, considering the fact of like the multiple times where he's tried to be actively genuine and like sympathetic and trying to be apologetic to people, and them just being like, what are you doing? So it like just the fact that he was able to let like everything out, that he felt like the love and like the acceptance, like, oh, it made my heart so happy, especially for the fact that they came together and made him like that new peg leg. Like, it's so sweet. Also, the woodsman and craftsmanship in this fucking show is just out of the world. Like, it's
amazing.
so wild.
Yeah. I love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Okay. So moving on from Izzy and his beautiful scene.
Cue fucked up couples counseling.
Yeah, we're gonna shoot over to the queers having a dinner party that gets real weird. So it opens with basically the couples being like, how did you meet? How did you meet? So Anna and Mary are telling the story of how they met, which, like, it's so sweet that Anne sliced off a face for Mary. How romantic.
That's the pinnacle of romance.
Right? Pirate romance, apparently. So that's how they met. And, like, she, like, did that to, like, impersonate a British officer, like, get her out of a cell, which... Go off, queens. Love it. So then after that, Stede shares how him and Ed met. And I do love this scene. So basically he says, I was gut stabbed, and he just so happened upon the ship I was bleeding out on, which is lies. Because you can see Blackbeard, you can see Ed's face being like, that's not the whole story. Because Stede still, at this point, doesn't know that Ed was hunting him down because he was so intrigued by the odd gentleman pirate. And that's how he ended up on the Revenge.
That did not want to meet him.
Oh, yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. He was intrigued by this weirdo who was breaking all the pirate code rules. He sent Izzy out to find him, and Izzy's like, he doesn't want to meet you, which only made him more intrigued. So it was no accident that Ed ended up on this ship. Like, look at that guilty face. Like, he's
to be fair, Ed is definitely, like, as Blackbeard, he's definitely the type of person that's never been told no. So the fact that Stede was like, no, I don't want to meet him. That's why Ed was like, okay, well, now I have to fucking meet him. Who is he to tell me no?
Exactly. That's only made him more interested in Stede. Exactly. But I think that I love this little tidbit because it is confirmation that, like, Ed was not super honest about, like, the fact that he basically had a crush on Stede before they even met, essentially. Which is so cute.
I can't blame him either, because, like, he's so used to, like, the manly man pirate, and here comes this, like, flamboyant twink of a man.
His golden retriever. No, I do love it though, because, like, he's like, yeah, I'll let Stede think that he was the one that was interested in me first. That's less embarrassing than what really happened.
That's also very on point for, like, Ed as a person to be like, I didn't like you first. What?
Right.
Like if they ever had, like, adoptee kids, that would 100% be the thing of, like, if, like, that's my headcanon, like, Stede finally knows the truth about, like, how it wasn't just, like, an organic meetup. It was, like, hunting down because of word of mouth. And he had the like, Ed had the crush first, and, like, Ed just starts blushing in front of their adopted kids, and he's like, nuh-uh.
Gross. I didn't catch feelings. You did. Yeah, no, because Stede would 100% run with that and tell anyone who had an ear what happened.
100%. And that's definitely a reason why Ed hasn't, like, confessed that yet, because Stede would get too much of a big head and be like, haha, you liked me first.
Especially now when Ed is still in his feelings and, like, is still sore about Stede leaving him. But down the road. Okay. Other thing from the scene that I think is really important is that, again, where are we? We're in the home of Anne and Mary, who are now these former pirates living the domestic life. And I think this was set up really to give us maybe a preview of what Ed and Stede's future could really be like once they figured their shit out, and if they really lean into Ed's dream of Jeff's Inn by the Sea, basically.
Until...
But, like, okay, but, like, what is this? So basically we have these pirates who were used to being ruthless, who were taking people's faces off. And now you've taken all of that away from them, and they have to, like, they're in the customer service business. So, like, what ends up happening? They end up as, like, the bickering married couple who's bored and trying to find excitement in this boring, quote, boring life, basically. Because they're, like, living out on the grid is essentially what's happening. And I think what it's showing is that, like, you can take the pirate out of the ocean, but you can't take the spirit of the pirate out of the person. Because even domesticity, while it's great and they're safe, it doesn't erase their, like, outlaw urges. So they get their adrenaline rushes where they can by like playing these games. So like in the scene, there's stabbings that happen and they're like, oh yeah, this happens. This is just what we do. This is how we feel alive, basically. So I take it that they were not taught to talk it through as a crew, these pirates.
I could probably see this type of stuff happening at the end with Stede and Ed, except Ed is doing the extreme stuff, and Stede is like, that is really not necessary. Let's go have some tea.
I don't know. I get the vibe that Stede would be the bored one, because that's why he left his home. He did have the domestic life and was bored with it. I feel like he would be the one who's more bored than Ed, because Ed's dream is like to just chill. But I think Stede is like, let's go. Like, he would just be the one who's so bored he creates projects constantly, like big grandiose projects, because he's bored. I feel like Stede would be the one.
Since we brought it up now, later in the episode we do bring up this point again, but I'll just say my point. I think they would find balances there. Like, they would find hobbies that they can do together, and maybe, I think because Stede would be the one to miss it, Ed would set up like a pirate day for Stede, where they basically play pretend pirates, but there is an actual treasure map with something to find at the end instead of just the orange. But so like kind of something like that. And I want to call it now. I think that is how Ed is proposing to Stede, with a treasure map.
Oh my god.
Treasure.
Oh
That'd
my
be
god.
very cute.
That's so cute.
I see where both of y'all are coming from, and I'm split because I feel the same way about both of these things. Because on one hand, yes, Stede left his home because of the monotony and just being bored and overall, but also he grew up in that. Like, that's all he knows. So of course he's gonna want like a little bit of an adventure. But I also agree with Theora on the like fact of the matter that he would have like these grandiose like projects, like, I'm gonna build a fucking gazebo in one day.
Right.
Or like, like, I'm gonna make sure like all of the rooms have like swan towels, or like some like niche shit like that. And like with like the whole Ed thing with like the pirate day, I think that'd be a wonderful thing. But I definitely feel like they would just like spar, like just have swords, do like a little fencing thing, and like they'd get their kicks from that. Like there's like two, like there's so many aspects that you can take from it, and that's like the beauty of like a headcanon, because there's no wrong answer. It's basically personal preference. So like it's just so great, and like I see both of where y'all are coming from, and I love both ideas, and I want both ideas to be played out in season 3. But they would obviously have to choose one path. So it'd be interesting if we do get a season 3 to see who's right on this.
I could see them giving pirate lessons to children as like an after school activity, or like, you know,
pirate.
Yeah. Be like how kids go to karate and stuff. They'd be like, okay, so today we're gonna learn about raiding, and like Ed goes too far in, and Steve's like, stop it, they don't need to know that yet. They're still pure.
Here's how you take a nose off a face with a knife. Jackie, no, why are you here?
Right. They got a special guest lecturer.
Yeah, they just bring in everybody, all this, and Jim's like, okay, so now you just gotta be yourself. Like,
here's how you get a bag. Here's how you get a bag as a woman to have 20 husbands. Jackie, no.
Yeah. Over the nose jar, kids. Anyway, yeah, that'd be amazing. I love everything about that. Oh my god. Please, 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 season 3. Okay, so back to the knife play. So knife play turns into foreplay, and Ed and Stede are sitting on the couch, and they're not super here from it. Like, at one point, Stede's like, should we leave? Which I find so funny. But I think this scene is karma for Ed and Stede. Back when, like, Izzy unfortunately had to overhear their knife play and thought this was erotic for fucking of some sort. So I do love that they get bit in the ass by karma with these two and their knives.
And also Ed's face in this is just like both Ed and Steve's face in this, just like the horror they have. It mimics Izzy's face when he thought that Izzy, Ed and Stede were fucking. And like, I love that.
It's so funny.
All I'm thinking right now is because you called Izzy a black cat earlier. Karma's a cat purring in your lap. Now it's coming back to
Oh,
It
gosh.
is. Okay, so shit keeps getting weirder because later Anne discovers that Mary poisoned her. Like, oh, she's paying attention to me. Like, these two are losing it with just like being trapped on land, is what the bottom line is. Okay. Also, Buttons is at this dinner. So it's a bunch of queers and a sea witch. That's this dinner. And Button finds his bowl of destiny and then joins the table. And they're eating the rabbit, like Ed's friend from earlier. And I love his line when he's eating and he's like, I can tell this rabbit was quite intelligent, actually, because it's so tender. Only Buttons.
Just makes Ed feel like even worse because he didn't know he was talking to a rabbit, but
And Stede's intelligent. Yeah, all the parallels are there. Just like, oh god, that this line. Okay. Something that is positive about this whole thing, because yeah, it's a bunch of weird stuff, and it's like this could be your future kind of thing. But something that also that's happening as the dinner goes on is that the more time Ed spends here, the more livelier he becomes. Because remember, at the start of the episode, he's like, Buttons is like, yeah, he's still in between worlds, even though he's physically here. But Ed starts shifting more into the land of the living as this goes on. So it's almost like the combination of Stede, even though he's pissed at Stede, but Stede being there, and the presence of danger. Because you notice, like, as this goes on, he starts like looking at his drink glass. He's like, he feels uncomfortable with these two pirates. It seems to pull him out of the other world and make him more present and like mentally present.
I think that's mainly just due to the fact of like, what is her name? I think it was Mary poisoning Anne.
I think.
Or
I don't remember who's who.
I think Anne is the one. Anne Reed, right? Or is it Anne Bonny? Whoever Reed is the one. Hold on.
Mary Reed and Bonnie.
The more masked,
yeah,
the more masked one poisons the chick with the bustier on.
Mini driver.
Yeah. And I think it's just mainly because of like them watching one person get poisoned. That kind of like also sucks at like out of the like the in between, because he's like, all right, well, survival instincts need to kick in. I need to know if I'm tasting fucking poison.
Yeah, exactly.
And like if I do taste poison, I need to let Stede know, because I can't let him die. Like it was like a mix of like seeing like this traumatic event going on and not knowing what the fuck's going on, plus the fact that like their lives potentially are at stake, which they ended up being at stake. But that definitely like helped with it. That was like an in combination type thing. And like that definitely goes to show that like even though Ed's pissed, thoroughly pissed, rightfully so pissed at Stede for what he's done to him, he still cares about him. He still loves him. He still cares about like his well-being and him remaining alive, because it's purely just like with Izzy with Ed being Blackbeard, codependency, doesn't know who they are without each other. And that's how it is with Stede and Ed. If one of them were to die, shit hits the fan, as we've seen with Stede having a full-on mental breakdown when he presumes that Ed is dead. It would be even worse if Stede had died instead of Ed, and Ed had to carry that. Like, that would have been significantly worse. Like, that would have been like sleeper agent awakened, everybody dies, no survivors. Like, he would even be going down to like down with the ship type shit.
Yes. I totally agree with that. So yeah, to your point that like Ed still clearly cares about Stede despite the bullshit, which is what makes the next part of the scene hurt because earlier Anne was making moves on Stede to make Mary jealous because they're bored. And so in that she learned why Stede left. And so she lets it drop in this dinner conversation that Stede left his wife twice. And Ed does some quick math, and then he's like, oh, that's why you left? You left me for her? And then loses his shit and starts destroying the chair.
I mean, maybe not the anger issue part, but it's reasonable to be angry.
Yeah, because that's a pretty big thing. You left out Stede.
Yeah, 100%. Because like as we mentioned before, Ed didn't really know if like something had happened with Stede, or if like Stede died, or if like Stede just left, or like he didn't know what that was. So him getting like actual closure of that and realizing that Stede just simply omitted it because he didn't want to have that difficult conversation, it's very rightfully so that he's pissed off, because it's like, you had so many issues and you confided in me about having so many issues about the monotonous life that you lived, yet you went back to that and you left me for that. Like, rightfully so. I would be pissed off too, man.
No, he has every right to be fucking pissed off. And so after this, like, they finally hash things out. And like, to Steve's point though, like, Ed was not mentally present when he came back from the gravy basket. So like, there really wasn't a great time to have this conversation because he was calling him a mermaid and stuff. So like, there was no time to have this conversation. And then Ed was like, fuck you, I don't want to talk to you. Just to Steve's point. But from Ed's point of view, to hear this from the lesbians as part of a game to like get their rocks off, like, that's insulting.
Yeah, because it would have gone over a little bit more smoothly had Stede been the one to tell him. Because that's usually how it goes. Like, I'd rather hear something from my partner that's going on instead of a third party. Because it's just like, why the fuck did you not feel comfortable telling me that? And like, that happens in pretty much every relationship, unfortunately, no matter how toxic or how healthy it is. You will unfortunately have that very hard, difficult situation of hearing something accidentally from a third party member instead of straight from your partner's mouth. And it's definitely a hard pill to swallow, especially if it's bad news. Like, if it's happy news, like, oh my God, my best friend told me that he's going to propose because he was talking to her about like what to do and everything, or like if like the script is flipped, she was going to propose, whatever the case may be. Like, hearing that from like your best friend, it's like, oh, I know you didn't mean to say that, but that's awesome. But if it's like bad news, like, oh yeah, your partner's cheating on you, it's just like, well, fuck. I really had to hear it from you and not from them. That's and that adds to the rage.
Yeah, no, definitely. And part of the whole dilemma, which they get into in this conversation, is at the end of the day, they were both like, Ed was all in. He's like, let's go to China. Let's fuck it. Let's just be together. And Stede freaked the fuck out. Right. And really what they realized in their absence with each other and like reflecting back is they both felt like the other person was toying with them, which has some truth to it a little bit. But like, really, they were scared that the thing between them was real. And neither of them felt worthy of the other and kind of fled from their feelings like scared little boys. Like, that's kind of what happened. And Stede tries to tell Ed that he loves him, but Ed shuts that shit down. He's like, I'm not a place right now to hear. You don't get to say that to me, is basically what he says. Because like, the wound that Stede left behind in his absence is still too fresh and has not healed. So I think that like, even if Stede just said it flat out, I don't think that part of Ed wouldn't believe that it's true. What the fuck? My webcam was such a bitch.
The fireworks strike again.
Well, because like, we could have had it all in the scene, but just Ed wasn't ready to hear it. So Stede, ever the persistent man, is like, okay, well, let me just tell you the things I love about you. How about that? And he's like, everything. Such a Stede. He's just like, let's start with everything. And I love that he's like, I love being near you. I love breathing the same air. And it's cute because this gets like this half smile out of, and we haven't seen him smile since many episodes. And it's like that whole thing that like the spark of life is starting to return to him. Even like the ability to smile is slowly coming back.
You're muted.
Yep. They have it bad.
They do. So bad. And speaking of bad, the lesbians stumble into the room laughing because they overheard this whole thing, because this is just like watching television for them. And they call out Stede and Ed's lack of sex life and then high-five each other. It's really fucking funny. They're like, oh, I knew it. Like, they're taking bets in the kitchen. And just their chaotic energy is just off the chart. And I find them wildly entertaining. These two.
It's so good. I like for minor characters, that's definitely like one of my favorite couples. Like, I wish they had a little bit more screen time rather than just like a portion of the episode. But like, I know it was purely just for the plot, unfortunately, which kind of sucks since this is like the only like lesbian couple that we actually see, because I wouldn't really count Jim as a lesbian since they're non-binary.
Agreed. Yeah, I agree with that. So now that Ed's brain is working, he puts together that the lesbians are having fun at their expense, and Mary explains the reality of their situation, which is that they are bored. And I've kind of talked about this already, but we already talked about this. Like, what would Blackbeard and Ed be like if they were married, running an inn? Like, how would that work? So we'll just move on. So it turns out
it'd be interesting. That's the answer.
It would be interesting. So it turns out that Mary and Anne aren't happy with this situation that they're in, and there's a fear from Mary of like going back, like, what if I can't be a pirate anymore, kind of thing. And so Anne decides for them and frees them by torching the house and all the shit. And she's like, now we have no choice. We have to go back to the sea and going back to our true nature is basically what's happening. Which is
all
pirating.
I could think about is you guys could have made so much money if you would have just like even like sold it all for like lesser, or just figured out a way like without burning it, because now you definitely have no chance of getting rid of this stuff and making a profit.
Not to mention, I'm pretty sure insurance policies weren't a thing back then, so they didn't get no insurance money.
Well, I mean, even if it was today, that would be arson. Yeah,
it's not accidental.
Yeah, no, but like they could also frame it as like, oh, we weren't at the house. Yeah, like somebody else did it. Like, so they could get away with it. That definitely, like, insurance fraud happens all the time, especially with arson.
We are not advocating for insurance fraud.
No, we're just saying they're pirates, and
canonically they would commit insurance fraud, is what I'm saying,
because they're pirates. But also, I think that the torching of the house is more symbolic than it is practical, because they're like, this needs to stop right now. Also, they're chaotic people, so obviously this is how they're going to deal with it. But there's that element of like, oh, we'll just sell everything and do it later. And then what if, like, they've been sitting at this house for later for a very long time. Mm-hmm. They have the opportunity to opt out and not do it. So that's why Anne's just like, fuck it, we're doing it. There is no going back now. This is happening. I think that's part of it.
Yeah.
All right. Given the unexpected arson, Stede offers Ed to stay on the ship for a night as long as the crew agrees, which Ed is super excited about. He's like, yep, yeah, I like that. And I love Steden's like, great. And he says it so loud. He's like, and he literally runs in the direction of the ship. Like, he doesn't know where he's going, but he's so excited. He runs back to the Revenge to like get the crew to vote. And Ed watches him run away, which is very, 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 very cute. But let us not forget about Buttons, who was here the whole time. And I love when Buttons like ruins this, and he like Ed's like staring after Stede longingly, and then Buttons like creeps around the corner and then looks at him, and he's like, "The sea is my love." Saying is relevant, but just the way he delivers lines is just hilarious. And the part of this Buttons speech that really hits home is he says, "To love the sea as she must be loved requires change," which, boom, this is what Ed really needs to hear. And I think somehow Buttons knew that, because it's Buttons. So I love that his last act before he transitions into being a bird is that he helps Ed and Stede, which is really, really sweet, by like telling Ed what he needs to hear. Like, you need to change, and that's okay. Like, that's the only way to move forward, is that you have to change. Because the whole purgatory thing is that Ed was trying to figure out how to move forward as the Ed 1.0, right? But what Buttons is saying is like, well, in order for you to actually move forward, you have to actually change. Like, that's how you get what you want. And that's scary. Change is a scary thing. So I think I love this conversation with Buttons, because it's just so like, here you go, Ed. That it's validating and also like directional. Like, this is what you need to do.
My theory is that it was a prerequisite for Buttons to become
part of the spell.
Yeah. It's like he needed to help guide someone to become one with the sea.
Well, I can see that, but at the same time, it's also very Buttons coded to impart one last little nugget of wisdom before never seeing them again, at least being able to like talk to them. So like, I also like that, but I do think it'd be very hilarious for Buttons just to be like, I didn't mean that. I just needed to do that for my own personal gain.
Or what if like that line was just part of the spell?
Right?
Like,
That
in
would be
order to love the
hilarious.
sea, you have to change. Like, that's the spell. And like, yeah, Buttons, that's real deep. But it's like literally what Auntie told him to say.
The world may never know.
We will never know. But what we do know is that the transmogrification works and Buttons turns into a seagull. And importantly, Ed kind of sees it. Not, he doesn't see him actually transform, but he sees the before and after, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So now that
and
he has
insinuates.
exactly. So now that he has proof that change is possible, it does motivate Ed to man up and try again with Stede. Because 5 seconds later, Stede comes running back and he's like, "Help me! I don't know where I'm going. I just ran into the woods and it's dark and I don't know what I'm doing. Help me!" So I love that Ed jumps at the chance to be like, "I can navigate us back to the ship. Let me help you." And when they meet up, like Ed very excitedly tells him what just happened with Buttons, and it's very much like their dynamic their old dynamic, right? Where like Ed gets excited and like tells the first person he wants to tell is Stede, right? So it's very cute that like that's the change. He just goes back into like the Ed that was with Stede, the Ed that was like more vulnerable, like you were saying, Zoey, like, and he just steps right into that. It's so cute and like a win for the gays out there.
I love it. He's just
So
like
cute.
he's just like a little child, like,
Yeah.
but it's turned into a seagull. But when he runs and tells him that, it's the lightest his voice sounds since season 1.
Yeah.
Like, we're getting our Ed back, and that's my favorite. I do love Ed.
I also just want to point out that like Ed and Stede's relationship is like pretty accurate for like newly considered gay people. Like it's going to be a little bit toxic because you're both like not in all cases, but like in some cases it's going to be a little bit toxic. It's going to be a rocky road because you're still both discovering, coming to terms with your sexuality, not knowing if you're still comfortable with that or not. Like it's a lot to take in. And especially if you're not confident and sure going into it type of deal. So I really like how they did like the whole like dynamic with them and everything because like a lot of people can really relate to that because like I know me when I first got into my relationship with a girl, I was like we were so like given like given it was definitely a toxic relationship, but like we were still like trying to figure out like our sexualities because we were still like very young. Like this was like in like about to be high school. So like we were still like trying to figure out everything. Like we knew like we liked women and we knew we liked feminine presenting people along with like masculine and presenting people and men as well. But like we just didn't know how to like navigate that through like a healthy like medium without like kind of being toxic in our own parts because I'd be lying if I didn't say that I was slightly toxic, but I was also a different person back then. So I don't fault myself for that, nor do I fault the person I was in a relationship with over that. But it's just once again another like nice little representation aspect of it. So I really appreciate that. And about the whole Buttons turning into a seagull thing, just to kind of like end on a happy note, I think it'd be absolutely fucking hilarious if it turns out that it was just like a happenstance thing that there was a seagull there next to the bowl and we just see like Buttons just like in the background of like certain scenes and then finally like coming around to like actually meeting with the crew and everybody just thinking that Ed is just like batshit fucking insane.
That would be so funny if just Buttons is just like this Where's Waldo like the rest of season 3. That would be so funny. Damn. No, that writes itself. I love that so much. But the way okay, I would love that, but also like the way this bird just like takes off has Buttons energy though. Just like excitedly is like flying over the sea. I love it. Like panicked flying.
Real deal though. I hope him and Livy live a happily ever after without the annoyance and threat of Calico Jack.
I wholeheartedly agree. Long live Buttons.
Because while we saw the cannon hit the vessel that Calico Jack was on, we didn't really get confirmation that he is actually dead. So if they end up doing a season 3, that would be an interesting aspect for them to kind of like circumnavigate with like Calico Jack just randomly appearing one day as he did the first time and everybody just losing their shit being like, how the fuck are you still alive?
Looney
Like that
Tunes.
would be very interesting.
Looney Tunes element of the show. Yeah, no, it's totally within the realm of possibility. Buttons can be a seagull. Calico Jack can still be alive. We'll never know. Give us to season 3, you cowards.
Either that or we just get David Jenkins on the show. Highly doubt we could, but like that would be one hell of an interview.
Oh my God, it would be.
Everyone go tag him politely and ask
Go
him
share.
to come on.
All right. Anything else to say about episode 4 before we wrap this up?
So good.
It's so good.
So much happened. And like I really appreciate the fact that like the episodes are almost like an hour long or something like that. Cause like I really like long form content, especially when I'm like binge watching and like very interested. And it's just also nice to like not even realize that like you're watching like a very long episode because you're so enamored into it and like so like fixated on it. Like you don't even realize that like time has flown by. Like I remember when I was watching it the first time and we were doing like the reaction episodes and just like coming to like and like y'all even saw it, like me getting so upset that I couldn't like watch the next episode because that's what we were reacting to, because I was like just so fixated on the show and so like so much so like thoroughly enjoying the show. So it definitely helped that it was in like long form content type of deal, because like I was able to get my fix while still like trying to like respect the reaction videos.
I love all that. One thing I'll add about this episode overall that I really enjoy that a lot of modern television doesn't do is that this was a like in a fantasy genre, this is considered a rest episode, like a rest chapter. Because if you think about it, what was the plot of this episode? Like it was the relationships sitting and figuring their shit out. It was just a character growth episode. That's all it was. Like the boat was anchored and not going anywhere, and then the other guys were on land. Nothing was happening plot wise other than the characters were having character growth. And I think that used to be more common in TV when you had 22 episodes a season and you had breather room to just have episodes where characters were just growing and there's nothing else really happening, like high stakes, right? Because they weren't rating anybody. They weren't like breaking out of Jackie's. Like a lot of the episodes in the season, there's been plot points to get the characters places. This, everybody just stayed where they were and just grew. And that's all the episode was. And I so wholeheartedly appreciate that. And I think that's one element of the show that I love, because the characters are able to breathe. They are able to grow. So everything that happens with them feels very organic and not plot forced, if that makes sense. Because I think when you start reducing episode numbers, then you have to inject a lot more plot into every episode. And so it's kind of exhausting sometimes to watch shows like that, because you're just constantly moving, and the characters can't breathe. So I appreciate that they had a whole episode where they just got to breathe and just grow. Like that was the whole episode. I guess the only plot thing that happened maybe is like Buttons becoming a seagull, like because it comes back later, but still, even that's an element of character growth. So I appreciate that about this episode, and shows that do that despite having limited episode numbers, because it's so important, I think, and it's often just erased in a lot of TV shows.
Yeah, I heard a lot in school that the BBC is so great because they only do 6 or 8 episode seasons, and so it's all action packed. But there's a lot of good moments and in the rest episodes. I mean, then you get the time loop frickin' episodes that everyone does in those rest episodes, and I hate those. But when they're done properly, they really move the story along in the sense that you get to know them more. And that's why I think I like the 12-13 episode seasons.
Yeah, I think a good example of like newer media that does like a really good execution of giving you a bunch of plot but also letting the characters rest is the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Oh my
There's
God, yes.
plot, but they also let the characters rest. They also like they give you like what is the term? Exposition. Exposition, thank you. They give you exposition while like having downtime with the characters. And like Michelle Yeoh, I love her to death. She's such a good actress, and like I couldn't think of a better person to play like the main character in a movie. And that definitely added like another element to it. So like I'm always going to be a sucker for that. Like I love bingeable content that actually makes sense to be binged, not just something that I'm binging as like background noise or binging because like it's popular or anything like that. Like I thoroughly enjoy like when it has like a good, like it gives you action and plot, but it also lets you have like beach episodes and stuff like that. Like I like fun stuff like that. Um which is very surprising considering that I'm mainly horror driven, but like, you know.
Or at the beach. All right. Well, let us know what media you like and what you thought of this episode. Again, we try to cover as much as we can, but we definitely leave things out. We would love to hear your thoughts and whether or not you enjoyed this episode. I hope you do because you're here still listening. So next time we will continue our discussion and pick up with episode 205. And until then, hydrate for lesbian Jesus.
And get up all over the place.
Bye.
Bye.
And with that, we've been Big Gay Energy. If you like this episode, check out all our other episodes right here on YouTube.
Please like, leave a comment below, and subscribe for more amazing super gay content.